All right, today is Friday, May 8th, around 11 o'clock in the morning. We're going to start going down another horror themed screenplay in part one right now. We already explored my kind of disturbing jailbreak episode 3, which kind of was a tribute to Halloween and other stuff like that. And for some reason around this time, I was really attracted to writing horror scripts. I didn't really intend to be like this. I wanted to make an original series, create an original series that was like a carbon copy of Black Mirror. I was all into that type of a dystopian science fiction and the evils of social media and all that stuff. Thankfully, I didn't really go down that route because I don't think I could ever do it better than a show like Black Mirror. I would just be trying to write episodes for Black Mirror instead of trying to create something new. Did I really succeed in creating something new in terms of an original series? I think so. I think it's as original as I could come up with, influenced by the Twilight Zones, the Outer Limits, and Black Mirror. But just like writing music, it's always going to be difficult to create something completely new that no one's ever tried before, no one's ever done before. Can you really do anything today that, in terms of music, specifically music, that no one's ever tried before? I don't think so. You could maybe branch out and mix genres together, Afrobeat with electronic music, see what you come up with. But yeah, I don't know. It's something I should research. How do people, artists, how do they strive to be original and unique, especially where in a business that's shrinking, I think, and it's promoted to fit a mold as an artist and a young artist and up and coming, who just got signed or putting out their debut album. I'm sure inside that community of record labels and agents and their own parents and family members and friends, they're trying to fit a mold that is already a known commodity. Oh, we got another Britney Spears and Sabrina Carpenter. I don't really know if they're that similar, but they look the same at least. Their image is similar. We got another Mary J. Blige. You can compare certain people because of their voices and yeah, I'm not saying there's really anything wrong with that. It's a business. It's almost like these artists are going in front of Shark Tank people, if you want to compare that to the record executives or the talent agents. And they're kind of seeing, what can I do with this artist? How can I market this? How can I bring this artist into America's kitchen or globally? So yeah, it's tough to be original in that kind of when that kind of a business scope is surrounding the entertainment industry. And so when I set out to write a horror script, it's no different. I'm just going from my memory banks of what I enjoyed in my life, what kind of really freaked me out in terms of horror. And yeah, during that time period, 2020, 21, I just kept going back to that, back to the well of gore and witchcraft and occult symbols and psychological drama connected to this story specifically is connected to kind of a sibling rivalry, which I thought was interesting to explore through kind of a witchy type of a story, a cursed lake in Scotland. I believe that was my log line when I first shared this. A cursed lake in Scotland features a long history of witchcraft and other preternatural events. I think that's how you say that word, preternatural. Part 1 of this story follows the curse from origin around 60 AD up to the early 1900s. And I shared this on my Substack back in November of 2023. So I guess I wrote it around that time, or maybe a little bit before that. But I didn't actually want to share it with people until Substack. I got involved with Substack. And yeah, it's weird. I never knew Substack existed until I got an email from like Kimbra, her Substack, trying to get people onto the site and that just clicked with me. I liked her site. I liked how she was handling it. She's got a good Substack where she's kind of more mysterious. She'll share projects like she did today, and she doesn't give it all away. She's just like, stay tuned for what I'm doing, whatever she's working on now. So yeah, she's got more of a marketing brain, I think, or whoever is doing her Substack, working with her and on her stuff like that. Because I don't think a lot of famous people really handle their social media themselves. They can't go through all the comments and all the crazy inner workings of social media. I'm sure they hire people to deal with that. At least some people do. But yeah, I'm back to a story about ancient lore and witchcraft and folklore, cannibalism, sibling rivalries. But I still feel like this fits the theme of my series, because it doesn't have to be like a Black Mirror or Twilight Zone. And you can find plenty of Twilight Zone episodes that are creepy as fuck. They have like creepy demonic dolls and aliens that are kind of creepy. Cannibalism even. Or some kind of a maybe human sacrifice. There's a lot of stuff about the fear of technology as well. So I'm sure Black Mirror had some inspiration from episodes, at least, of the Twilight Zone. It might be the most groundbreaking show if you really want to boil it down. Maybe the Lucy Show, maybe that kind of set the standard for sitcoms in America. Lucy, I Love Lucy, and then maybe like shows in the 70s like WKRP in Cincinnati and Laverne and Shirley, and I don't know, I guess one was Happy Days. That was probably in the 60s, I guess. So all those shows kind of set the bar for sitcoms, kind of like the Twilight Zone did for science fiction and just oddities, eccentric stories that are able to make it onto American televisions. I don't know what kind of a global effect the Twilight Zone or the Outer Limits has had. Do they market these shows to foreign markets? Probably. The Twilight Zone is such a brand, even with the creepy music. They knew what they were doing. They made that show a legendary status, I think, fairly quickly. Not that I was around back then, but yeah, people today and even growing up, people would have like Twilight Zone marathons, and I'm not as obsessive over that show. I don't really watch it that much, to be honest, but it's been in my life as almost like a post, a starting point. You want to learn about science fiction? Watch the Twilight Zone. You want to learn about creepy horror stories and weirdness and the stretching out of the human imagination as far as it could go, then yeah, just watch a marathon of Twilight Zone episodes. Watch like 8 to 10 a day, and it'll become a part of your consciousness. You'll remember a lot of the stories, and maybe later on you'll watch it again and you'll notice new things, new metaphors, new symbolism. So yeah, definitely recommend to any, I guess, people in their teenage years, you want to get started on some creepy stuff, watch the Twilight Zone. But I set this story, it's called the Wraith's Refrain, and I'll get into that too, because music is a big part of this. I set this story in Scotland because I don't know, I just feel like Scotland has a cool type of a folklore element. There's tons of history, way more than American history, I feel at least. You can trace like Scottish heritage way back. America has only been around, well, now it's like 250 years it's coming up on. But yeah, there's more of a written account of bloodlines and all this hauntings in Scotland. You get that in America too. It's not completely absent. There's plenty of, you had the Salem witch trials and other really horrific events that probably left a stain, left kind of a dark spirit across the United States of all the Trail of Tears and all these horrific moments, slavery, the Native American genocides all across the country, really. So yeah, there's good and bad, but I'm sure there's plenty of, and there's shows that do document that, whether it's like the stupid Ghost Hunters. I really don't like those shows, but there's other shows that might catch my eye if they talk more about hauntings and wicked spirits in hotels because there was some crazy event that happened there 200 years ago. Maybe those are a little bit more interesting from the writing side of my brain, so I could think of other concepts that might be usable. There's a story in Scotland, Sawney Bean. He was like a Scottish cannibal, and I think he lived in a cave. Maybe there was some inbreeding going on. I don't know. But I added this flavor to my story. There's a character named Sawney, and I don't want to talk too much about it until I get to the story. But yeah, I was just on YouTube, Scottish folklore, Scottish witchcraft, Scottish legends, and I would just eat it all up and take what I thought was interesting. I read a couple books about that, even like Welsh and Scottish mythology. There's a book called the Mabinogion. I'm saying it wrong. It's Mabinogion. The Mabinogion. I forget how to say it. There's another one by Alice Roberts, The Celts. I read that one and tried to learn about the Druids. I think what I remember about that is that there's not a lot of history about the Druids. There's not a lot of written accounts, maybe purposefully. So that's intriguing on its own. You have this ancient kind of I don't even know what to call it. Is it pagan? The Druid type of lifestyle. These Druid priests and priestesses that kind of are depicted in other horror movies. This really ancient, this ancient knowledge that got lost over the centuries. So of course that's going to captivate a writer, because why wouldn't you want to have a piece of that mystery? Like, I think Highlander is pretty fucking mysterious. Highlander, that's a pretty crazy show. Or Quantum Leap. Quantum Leap was like a Black Mirror episode. I used to watch that all the time as a kid. It was like MacGyver and then Quantum Leap on like the USA Network. So that was like my summertime for a long time. I would just watch those episodes back to back. Quantum Leap, what was that? It's consciousness transfer. This dude, he would just, every episode he's entering a different body with his consciousness until he gets back home. Scott Bakula. There's an episode of Always Sunny. I mentioned like Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like every recording now, because it's a huge influence on my brain. Maybe more of a comedic. I don't know if I really consider myself to be funny, but I try to put sense of humor in a lot of this stuff. Maybe not so much this story, but there's an episode of Always Sunny with Scott Bakula. He's like a janitor in a nursing home or something. I forget. It's pretty funny. So yeah, you could look at that. That's really no different than a Black Mirror episode. You just have to make it darker, put some stuff in there about the ills of social media and the oncoming singularity as humanity becomes one with machine, and Quantum Leap would fit perfectly into a Black Mirror episode. They've done the similar consciousness studies like that in a lot of their episodes. Kind of deals with that. What is consciousness, and can you keep it for eternity on some other digital device? Can you establish some kind of an afterlife like that show Upload did, where people can pay for the type of afterlife they want after their consciousness goes to a different realm, whatever it is? Don't ask me to explain the scientific side of that. I'm just a conceptual guy. I can't tell you if that would ever be possible to trap someone's consciousness in a digital device. I'm sure it's not really considered truthful science. It's just all theoretical, just like a lot of stuff. There's probably stuff from hundreds of years ago that's still mainly like a theoretical concept, but maybe it gains more traction as more people are exposed to it. The more people learn about a scientific concept theory, the more it kind of comes to life, like almost like a rumor. You pass a rumor that whatever, this famous actor is putting gerbils up his ass. I'm stealing that from Joe Rogan too. I steal a lot from Joe Rogan stuff and Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I think Joe Rogan has a comedy bit about that. How you mentioned Richard Gere, and the first thing people think of is the rumor that went around that he put gerbils up his ass or whatever. Because I even remember that. And I was probably like a kid at that point. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. Putting gerbils in your ass. What does that do? Clean out your colon? Colon blow? I don't know. But it's almost like that. As a rumor expands and expands, it's almost like it develops into a more rational truth, and people accept it more because everyone's repeating it and repeating it. So it's interesting how that type of a human response can turn a rumor into truth. That's kind of horrific in its own light. So this is called The Wraith's Refrain. The Wraith's Refrain. I thought it had a good ring to it. It's a two-part story. When I first wrote this, maybe it was like 60 pages, because I put part 1 and part 2 together as one long story. When I was going through it, I just made a decision, this is too much information packed together. You have to split this up into two separate stories with two separate atmospheres and moods and characters. So yeah, I just split it up and rewrote a lot of the stuff and the tone. So this first one is it's almost like the mood of that movie, The Witch. What's the guy's? He's a pretty famous director. I think he did that Viking movie with Nicole Kidman. I forget his name, but he's a pretty popular horror guy. So that's the type of mood I'm trying to set in part 1, which I'll read today. I just want to get his name. Robert Eggers, yeah. I think he did that one with Willem Dafoe, The Lighthouse. That was pretty disturbing. The Northman. Yeah, he wrote and directed The Witch 2015. I don't think I've actually seen that. But there's some creepy characters. Like, I think child actors. I think there's a scene in that movie with very disturbing, but amazing acting from this child actor. And he's either maybe, I don't want to say because I never saw this movie. I think I watched that scene though. because again, I'm going down that territory of the two lead characters in this story are even younger than the characters in Jailbreak. They're probably like 8, 10 years old, but they also grow up during this film. So you would kind of have to have different actors because we span maybe 20 years of their life or something like that. And more than that in the next part. So it's another one of those movies you would have to have a child actor to play the beginning scenes, and then maybe get a different, well, definitely get a different actress to play their older versions of themselves. But yeah, check out Robert Eggers. I watched some of these. I watched The Lighthouse. The writing was amazing. It's a very disturbing movie, another psychological type of horror. I believe I saw The Northman. I don't remember it completely, but I think it was pretty. The visuals were striking. I don't remember the story or anything. It's been a while, but I got to put that on my to watch list. The Witch, and he's done other horror too. I just can't think of anything else right now. I didn't know he was an American. I thought he was from like some other country. He did Nosferatu, The Witch, The Lighthouse, The Northman. And yeah, he's pretty well known as a horror type of director, but maybe he branched out into other stuff as well. Yeah, I wouldn't say The Lighthouse is a horror, but it does have moments of that where it's just, yeah, Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe together, and the whole movie is really just them having these crazy conversations together. But definitely worth checking out. Mixed reviews for that one, but like it's a movie I don't think I would watch again because it's just so psychologically. There's all these symbols about, I don't know, seagulls, and they're like omens for sailors' death or something. I vaguely remember some of that some of the folklore elements, and that's what I'm going for. You can. I mentioned this guy. I didn't mean to speak about Robert Eggers, but I think it's a good comparison. The feel of part one is definitely something that I probably was influenced by after watching his movies. And really, I have to see The Witch because that's the one that's probably most relevant. But I don't think I ever saw the whole thing. So I'm going to have to go back and go through that. That's from 10 years ago, 11 years ago. But yeah, he's noted for his blending of horror, folklore, and mythology, which is exactly what I'm going for with this story in part one. So I guess I'll get into the story now. You want to put yourself in that mindset because we're going back in time now. It gets a little bit crazy because we are starting this with a very long flashback. We're starting with the Druids in whatever year the Druids were, and I think I set this in the beginning in Scotland in AD 60. So yeah, we're going way back to Roman warriors in Scotland to kind of begin this story of this cursed lake that still remains today. And yeah, maybe the whole Nessie thing. To me, it just seems like a tourist attraction. They just made that shit up to kind of maybe either scare the children, like, because sometimes people do that with folklore just to scare kids into submission. Or, yeah, I guess it's just a tourist attraction, the Loch Ness Monster. I think that's more of just a Disneyland thing than a scary thing at this point. I just think of, yeah, Willie from The Simpsons, old Nessie. And the other thing I'll mention, when I wrote the dialogue, it was difficult because I'm writing for old Scottish characters from the 1800s a lot of times. And I don't know. I've never been to the UK. I don't know any English people or Scottish people or Irish people really, like with real accents like that. So I'm just going by what I've encountered through other forms of media and how Welsh people talk or Scottish people talk or English people. And even in English, there's different dialects, Liverpool, Manchester. So yeah, I'm not going to try to mimic any accents in this, but maybe you would need to get some authentic Scottish people to put these lines of dialogue, make it more realistic to that time period. It's just like when I wrote the Western in episode 1 with Bowie, and I was confused of how to write a Western. These frontier people in America that moved west in the 1800s, the mid to late 1800s to Arizona, California. What did they really sound like? I don't know 100%. I just kind of gave them somewhat like of a southern accent, I guess. But I don't know. Those things can be figured out. I think actors are more trained and stuff like that to develop these characters and historically accurate to a degree, at least. To be historically accurate as you can be. I didn't watch that Napoleon movie, but I kind of heard mixed reviews on it. The one that just came out, Joaquin Phoenix. I didn't watch it, so I can't criticize it or praise it, but I don't know how they handled the accent. Or isn't there like a John Wayne movie where he plays like a Roman warrior or something in Egypt maybe? And I don't think he changed his accent. It's like, why would you cast... like, it sucks. What if Tony Soprano played like in Gladiator? It just wouldn't work. It sucks because you get typecast. Maybe even Clint Eastwood. He was either like a tough cop or a Western guy. It's a cowboy in the West. Because of not just his voice, but just the scowl he had. But can you picture James Gandolfini like in a historical drama like Gladiator, playing one of the... I don't know, man. I'm sure Gandolfini was a very established actor who did plays and other stuff. But I feel like even actors, because I don't know any actors. I never took anything like this in any school, in high school or college. Never was involved in plays or any kind of music in anything I've done in school. So I never was in that world of arts, like a community of artists. I was never maybe I was just afraid to be a part of that world. Because if you don't really have someone guiding you, you're not going to know. You're just going to feel stupid in any type of performance in front of other people. Yeah. It's like I tried to do a stand-up comedy routine maybe like 2 years ago. I was like, let me try to do a stand-up comedy routine on Substack, like a 5-minute stupid stand-up. And yeah, it was so stupid. Open mic stuff, yeah. It's a different animal. Even if you're in some place with like 5 people watching you in the audience, when your psyche knows you're performing something, it could change. And I guess that just comes with practice to get better and better at it. Like even doing something like this, just reading my script aloud is something I'm really trying to work on and become better, more professional. Because voice actors, yeah, they make a lot of money, man. If I can develop a good speaking voice and read audiobooks and do stuff like that, that would be an amazing way to make a income just through your voice acting. So I'm trying to take this seriously. I'm also trying to make it entertaining because I'm putting myself in other people's shoes. Why would people want to listen to me? They don't know who I am. Just like when I wrote my book, I'm like, who's going to buy this? Because nobody knows who I am. I can't even advertise it on Facebook to like old friends or family members. I'm not allowed on Facebook for some reason. I don't know why. I've been banned from Facebook now, even though I haven't been on there in like 15 years. So is that really blocking my path? Not not by itself, but I think there's a lot of different elements of it's not just me being paranoid or cynical about shit. There's a lot of elements that do kind of block me from achieving what I want to achieve for whatever reason. And yeah, it's pretty fucked up. The Facebook thing is just one obvious glaring example. I can't go on Facebook. It's been blocked for me for years now. For no reason. I can't find out what the reason is. It's a very frustrating issue when a company can just block you and discriminate against you for no reason. It's complete. Well, in terms of just I know Facebook's a global company, but and I talk shit about it all the time because it is a waste of time. It's just a mode of maybe spreading a lot of propaganda and bullshit. But I would rather be on there than not. At least have a presence to advertise my book. I'm doing everything DIY. I don't have money to do anything. I don't have a network of people who have my back or trying to promote me. I have to try to do this on my own, which is almost impossible. But especially when I have these forces blocking me in a lot of ways. So you could say it's a rigged system, and I'm more than more than in agreement with that. From my experience over the last 5, 6 years with different modes of social media specifically, it's a lot of bullshit that people put out there. And yeah, I talk shit about social media all the time, but in today's world, as an artist doing it yourself, I kind of need to use those tools to the best of my abilities. So yeah, it's a fucked up thing that I can't even go on Facebook. I can't go on. I don't even have an account. I was on there maybe 15 years ago, and then I canceled my account, deleted it all because it was such a waste of time. And literally 15 years I haven't been on there. So I tried to make a new account, and this was like a couple years ago. I made Instagram, Twitter. I even tried TikTok not too long ago. I tried Blue Sky, whatever the hell that is, and LinkedIn. I think that's all of them. Then I tried to do Facebook, and they wouldn't even let me create an account. They said I was blocked for going against their policies. They don't say what it is, and they don't really give you an outlet to express your frustration. There's no customer service line. So I wish somebody else would mention this in the comments if that happened to you and explain what to do at that point. And yeah, I'm one of those people that, yeah, I don't like being fucked with like that, especially because I lost my job similar way. I was with this company for 11 years, and I talked about this a couple times already. And then in 2021, they just let me go without an explanation. And they tried to put a bunch of bullshit on me. They offered me $20,000 when I left, and kind of like here, just take this money so you don't sue us for wrongful termination or anything, which I never took the money. And I haven't talked to anyone in that place since I left. But it's still there 5 years later. I took that opportunity. I tried to turn that into something positive by doing this. So if I do become famous, yeah, I guess that was a good fork in the road that a company like that could just fuck me over after 11 years for no reason. Like, that's why I get upset with Facebook, because they do the same thing. They say, hey, you're banned. Why am I banned? Oh, we don't know. We don't have to give you a reason. And then how do you defend yourself against nothing? You can't. I had a big rant weeks ago. How does somebody defend themselves against nothing? If the company that fires you doesn't give you an explanation, how do you defend yourself? They just throw a bunch of bullshit on the wall and see what sticks, and nothing sticks. So they just say, all right, we don't need you anymore, get out. So yeah, that's my main gripe with Facebook, is probably because of that experience. That's a little bit more traumatic, because you actually lose your financial security at that point when you're with a company for 11 fucking years, and then they just say, hey, we don't need you, get the fuck out. And yeah, it was done in a way that was really fucked up. That's probably why I get triggered by when Facebook bans me for no reason. And how can they ban me when I don't even have an account? Is somebody making up a fake account of me and putting it on there, and they think that's me? Like, because I know that happens with phishing and other bullshit. Like the interviews I had with Starbucks. How do I know those people are even real? Like, they're really the people at Starbucks. You can make a whole script about that. It's just scammers or something. I had ideas for horror stuff like that. Like, maybe these people are interviewing vulnerable people to get them across the country, and then they gut all their organs out. You wake up in a bathtub without your liver or kidneys. Yeah, that's where my brain goes sometimes. But that's a good ending point of this preamble, to get a little darker. But this horror type of a script is kind of more entrenched in the folklore element. So let's begin. We're going to fade in now to a countryside and a lake, and it's nighttime. We see the shadowy figure of Hilda. She's 18 with a mole on her left cheek, and she's levitating over the water towards the middle of the lake, as human arms, legs, torsos, and feet float up to the surface around her. The calm water swirls around faster and faster, forming into a whirlpool. As fires erupt along the shore, now an unseen force is strangling Hilda's neck as she slowly sinks below into the lake. Now it's daytime, and we're drifting through green rolling hills towards a small patch of farmland where a humble garden of weeds, herbs, and wildflowers leads to a Scottish country cottage from the 1800s. So yeah, we are in Scotland. Of course, you could film this anywhere, but the setting is Scotland in the 1800s for the majority of the story. Now we are drifting inside the side window of this Scottish cottage, where Flora, 18, Hilda's identical twin sister, plays a somber waltz on a small upright piano. Now we're drifting high into the clear sky, as Flora's somber waltz plays from the piano. These are all establishment shots. The main story is going to take place in this cottage, in this time period, with Hilda, 18, Flora, 18. But actually, we meet them earlier as their children, but they're the two protags. They're the two people with the conflict. They're the two characters that are they're going to get involved with the curse of this lake and the witchcraft involved with all of this. So I wanted to open this on them. Although we're not going to get right into their story right now, I think it's cool to establish right in the beginning of the film by looking at Hilda levitating over this lake but we don't know why this is happening yet. And then we see Flora, and at that point, you don't even know they're different, maybe. The audience would be a little confused the first time they view this movie. The only difference is that Hilda had a mole on her left cheek, and Flora doesn't, but they're completely identical twins. So yeah, the audience wouldn't really know what these establishment shots are really saying. They're probably going to think Hilda and Flora might be the same people if the first time they viewed this at least. So from that scene, and I will mention, I'll need someone to make a composition here of this Wraith's Refrain. It plays a huge role in this, kind of like I wanted to do in other stories, like Jailbreak and other stuff. Music always plays a big part in my story writing. I would need someone to compose a piano melody that's kind of creepy, kind of ethereal, maybe a little bit of ambient stuff because the lake isn't the only thing that's cursed in this. There's a kind of a musical curse as well. And throughout this story later on, I'm going to keep saying the Wraith's refrain is playing during this scene. The Wraith's Refrain is now being played on the piano. So I would rather have somebody else compose that. I'm not a piano guy. I don't have a brain for the piano to develop something haunting. Maybe I'm selling myself short again. I said the same thing with the violin thing. What was that for? Shit. Everything is free, right? That there be some moments where you need music in that. And maybe I'm forgetting to. But yeah, there were some parts in Everything is Free, which is another horror script that deals more with, well, it's also about witchcraft too. But, I've never played any other instrument besides guitar, besides messing around. Like, I played guitar for over 20 years, off and on. I'm pretty comfortable with it as an instrument, but I've never tried anything else besides just, fucking around on someone else's piano. And maybe that's about it, really. So it's a very, very important part of this story. Whoever develops this composition, it would be like the da-na, da-na-na in Jaws, or I mentioned Halloween when I talked about Jailbreak. Those are so memorable, and you need moments like that in a horror movie, I think, to break up the tension or to add to the tension. So yeah, it's very important to me. I like looking at these. When I write these stories, I'm listening to music the whole time. And I think I was listening to a lot of ambient stuff during the writing of this part one. All right. So we met Hilda and Flora. I guess the audience doesn't really know yet that they're twin sisters. They just think it's the same person, but it doesn't matter. Now we're going to begin a very long flashback sequence. I kind of titled this as the origin of the cursed lake, because that's what this is. This motivation to have this long, through the centuries, look at this cursed lake. It's just to show that this is what the story is based on. This is what everything is going to play off of, is the curse of this lake in Scotland. So we're on the countryside in the daytime to begin this flashback as a group of druid mystics perform a sacred ritual inside a large triquetra symbol. And you could look that up. I think it's just kind of like 3 oval symbols, the triquetra. It's a pretty well-known, maybe kind of Celtic. It's Celtic, right? I say Celtic because of the basketball team. It's kind of like that Yeah, it's like a Celtic symbol that a lot of people have on necklaces and tattoos and stuff. If you look it up, you'll know it as soon as you see it on Google or wherever. Um, so these druids in their like creepy. I'm not trying to talk shit about druids, but I always picture them in like those creepy robes, and they're having this ritual inside this large triquetra symbol made from stone, almost like a Stonehenge type of appeal. One beautiful druid priestess holds hands with her young son as they chant together with the others, many appearing to be in a total trance, aided by the pounding of drums and harmony of deep voices. So they're like doing that chanting, group chanting. And superimposed on this scene is Scotland AD 60. So we're way, way, way back. A short distance away, a small army of Roman warriors on horseback watched the spiritual ceremony with disdain, weapons drawn. Their bloodthirsty general lifts up his sword, and they charge towards the druids, killing all in their path, as the druids calmly remain in their circle, communing with the spirits. The priestess protects her son from a sword attack, only to be pierced in the chest by another, as she bleeds out onto the green field, waiting to be struck again. A small group of painted Scottish warriors charge the Romans on foot. The Roman warrior is distracted by the charge, while the priestess grabs a stone, jumps onto him, and smashes his skull until he's left unrecognizable. Now this druid priestess is picking up her son and hurrying away as the two sides are battling in every direction. Before you get like, oh, this guy, what's he talking about? This isn't historically accurate. Yeah, I get it. I did some research about when, ancient Rome invaded the British Isles, whatever it was called back then. And there were some stories about foreign armies in Scotland and Ireland. If those, whatever they were called back then, I don't even know if that's what they were called. So I'm not the historical guy. I did research 5 years ago when I wrote this, or whenever it was, 4 years ago. But I don't have that in my head anymore to say, yeah, the Romans, they attacked Scotland and you see? So whether or not this is completely historically accurate, I don't care, man. It still works. If it really became such a contention, a plot device, then it doesn't have to be Roman warriors. Just make it whatever. But for some reason, I just thought it was more interesting as a foreign army. Like, you could just make it English, right? The English and Scottish, they were always fighting back then, right? Different tribes. So the point of this scene is just that this druid priestess is trying to save her son from this invading army. I made it the Romans. You could do it something different if that doesn't float your boat. So I try to be historically accurate to some degree, but I really don't know if that has any relevance to the real history of Scotland in 60 AD. Like, yeah, I'm not a history major, man. All right. We now follow the druid priestess. She's now near death from her wound from earlier. She's carrying her son down to the lake, where she removes her blood-stained robe, kisses him on the forehead one last time, and then enters the calm water to die. Enraged, she stares up into the sky one last time and screams with her last bit of strength, imploring her gods to give her vengeance as she chants in a mythical language. Priestess. These are just made-up words. Juta Polonahat, Boria Histopa, Harold Lapraka. I just made up a bunch of words. They're just really just syllables that sounded interesting, I guess. I'm not really the reincarnation of some druid priest. I don't think these words are would be close to any language. I'd be surprised if somebody said, "Hey, that's an actual word." All right, so this priestess is in the lake. Her blood is dripping down into the water, and she's chanting this ancient spell as it forms the lake is now forming a red whirlpool as her body's consumed, and her son is watching this as he cries from the shore, never to see his mother again. All right, now we're a little bit we're at nighttime now. Those same Roman warriors are sitting around a fire within the large triquetra symbol that we saw before, and they're celebrating their victory over the Scottish warriors. These Romans are feasting and drinking on ale out of their helmets, out of the helmets of the fallen combatants. And nearby, the druids that they slaughtered are hanging from trees to serve as a warning to any other dissidents. As the full moon shines on all of these people, the Roman warrior skin, they begin to boil with obscenely large and disgusting sores. As these blistering bubbles burst, large chunks of skin and flesh splatter into the fire and the surrounding countryside until every last Roman warrior dies a most agonizing death. We drift high above as ravens fly over this horrific scene, while those still alive below scream for death to take them. So these people are just in incredible pain now because of whatever curse that this priestess did in the lake as she sacrificed herself for her son and for whatever entities might live. And now she's cursing these Roman warriors to death. As when she was kind of performing like a blood sacrifice to this lake, and that's really the origin of this curse. You could trace it back to that. This priestess was able to, in a way, curse this lake for the rest of history because of what happened to her and her druid brethren and sisters and her own family. Yeah, so that's kind of like the origin of this curse. It goes all the way back to the druids. All right, we're moving on now to this countryside and this lake, but we're moving to 1310. So a lot of time has passed here. We drift down from the clear sky towards the lake again as that superimposed Scotland 1310. So we started in 60 AD, now we're in 1310. The same lake as Ada, 20, a wild woman of the woods, skins a rabbit carcass on the shoreline as she hums a peaceful melody to herself, while Asheen, also 20s, just as wild of a woman, washes herself in the lake. Asheen gazes up towards ravens in flight, then bends down and kisses Ada, who giggles and flips on top of her, then gently kisses her neck. A little bit later in that day, the sun is setting as Ada cooks the rabbit meat over a campfire, hidden behind some bushes near the shore, while humming a peaceful melody. Asheen is by her side, preparing rosemary, garlic, sage, other berries on plates of straw. She feeds some of the berries to Ada, then hugs her from behind and kisses her as they laugh and dance together. All right, so yeah, they're just lesbians from Scotland in 1300s. There are probably some witchy elements to this too. I just thought it was more interesting to have like a lesbian couple from 1,000 years ago. So later that night, 2 English soldiers are now patrolling the lake, yards away from the campfire. Soldier 1 is gazing towards his reflection in the calm lake water. So you can make this kind of a creepy thing. Every time people get near the lake, You could have weird shit popping up in the reflections, and that's kind of a horror trope, but also could freak people out if you make it disturbing. Soldier 1, as he gazes towards his reflection, is talking to Soldier 2. Soldier 1, not seen any combatants for weeks now. Soldier 2 stares towards the stars. Soldier 2, we eat, we drink, we take commands. Modest life of routine, cultivated and made for us survivable. Soldier 1, routine of which crushes a man's inner verve until his once proud member surrenders forever dormant. Soldier 2 laughs and flicks him in the crotch. Soldier 2, proud member of which you had not much prior use for. Soldier 1 struggles to get his breath back as his partners laugh at his expense. Soldier 1, shut it, you. A proud English member nonetheless. So, yeah, I think England and Scotland, they kind of fucked each other up throughout the years, right? I don't know if my time period's correct. The 1300s was their English occupying force in Scotland. I don't remember. Maybe that's why I picked that, because I did research this a little bit when I was writing this. This isn't a major part of the story, but as I followed the origin of this curse throughout this time period, I wanted to be a little bit accurate. So I believe there were English armies invading Scotland at that point, and earlier and even later probably. I think there was always kind of rivalry there. And even today, isn't Scotland trying to gain independence from the UK? I think they almost did. So again, yeah, I need some other consultants. If this would become a movie, yeah, you would need some people with real knowledge of Scottish history, because I'm not trying to pretend to be that person, man. All right, we're moving on later that night, a little bit later, as Ada is slicing the rabbit meat with a sharp rock, and Asheen is walking by her towards the forest. Asheen, be back. Ada, don't be wandering off far, love. She slices more of the rabbit meat, then grinds down some rosemary leaves. And around this same time, near the lake, the two English soldiers are continuing their patrol, slowly approaching the campfire. Soldier 1, make enough coin, then return home. Provide myself a life of my own pleasurable routine. Soldier 2, and your coin shall disappear swift as my arrow until the next battle is decreed, which will no doubt find you gluttoned and gray. Soldier 1 sniffs the air. Soldier 1, rosemary. Soldier 2 spots the campfire smoke and pulls out his sword. Soldier 2, ghost of foes or fallen English warriors. Either way, easy food for our take. So these two soldiers are just on patrol. They're trying to rip each other. I'm like, how did soldiers how did soldiers kind of insult each other in a friendly fashion back in those days? That was my motivation for this dialogue, trying to come up with just stupid lines like that. So they notice the campfire. They're moving towards it now. We're back in Ada's storyline, as Ada is now laying on her back, staring towards the stars, waiting for Asheen's return, with 2 plates of straw by her side full of berries, herbs, and meat of the rabbit. She walks down to the lake, washes her face, while Soldier 1 grabs her from behind and smacks her in the cheek with the blunt end of his sword. Soldier 2 violently pulls her back up and covers her mouth as she tries to bite his hand. Soldier 2, easy now. We'll have to work this night for your supper, wench. Soldier 1 ties her hands around her back with some rope, then stuffs dirt into her mouth, while Soldier 2 rips her clothes off and rapes her from behind. Ada stares at her reflection in the calm lake water, unable to escape his hold, while Soldier One grows impatient and shoves his partner's arm. Again, every time you go near the lake, you could show weird stuff. Like there's some kind of a spirit watching this or something. Soldier One, hurry your thrust, my proud member awakens. A sheen sprints at him from behind and stabs him in the cheek with the sharp rock, while Soldier Two quickly pulls out his sword and slices her right through the neck. Ada spits out dirt and watches her lover fall to her death, her head barely attached to her body anymore. She then bites Soldier Two on his nose in a desperate rage, while Soldier One pushes her into the lake, removes his pants, his blood now dripping into the water around her. Soldier One, enjoy these last moments of pleasure, for my blood now has been drawn. He gropes her from behind and chokes her neck. Soldier One, any chance of merciful outcome sinks down below with it. So he's saying all this while he's like raping her, or getting ready to. She tries to fight him off, but falls into the lake, staring towards her lover's corpse, while he punches her in the face, and she blacks out. So yeah, it's a pretty disturbing scene on page 6. I just figured that's how things probably happened back then. These soldiers, and it's not an indictment on English or Scotland or Rome. I just had to make this seem historically believable, right? There's good and bad on any country, so I'm not trying to create any rivalry between the Romans and the English and the Scottish and the English. I think they have enough rivalries and shit like that. So I'm just trying to make things historically accurate, man. All right. Now the next morning, the same location. Early morning sun is shining down on Asheen's dead body, while Ada lays lifeless next to her. The campfire now long out, and only crumbs left on the straw plates. A few hours later, we see her more, and she's bruised and bloodied all over, and she's barely alive at this point. She's sobbing as she pushes Asheen's body into a freshly dug grave along the shore. She moves dirt over her mangled corpse, gazes skyward, and screams with all her might in agony. All right. That night, Ada is crying herself to sleep on top of Asheen's grave, and she structured a large triquetra symbol. She either draws it in the dirt or maybe she makes it with stones. Either way, whatever works on screen better. And now we go into her dream as she's sleeping. In her dream, Ada is levitating over the lake as it turns to blood, boiling like a volcano. Fires erupt along the shoreline while demonic moans echo and human body parts emerge from the water. That's all we see of her dream. We end Ada's dream right there with some of those disturbing images. Moving on, the next morning the sun rises as Ada stands naked in the shallow water in a daze. She's slicing 3 vertical gashes into her back with a sharp rock, then 3 vertical gashes into her torso. Her blood is dripping down into the water of the lake as she chants in an ancient language and slices 3 more gashes into her neck. I don't know why I did this. I was trying to create a ritual, like a blood sacrifice, and I'm like, how would this witchy woman in Scotland sacrifice her blood to this lake? Kind of the same thing that happened in 60 AD. Maybe there's some kind of a pull to do this. The lake is like promoting this blood sacrifice, and if you want vengeance, go to this lake and offer your blood to it, offer your life, and you will get your vengeance. Like that type of an appeal of a cursed lake like that. And I'm like, well, how would a blood sacrifice work? So she's just slicing these 3 gashes in her back, and then 3 gashes in her torso, and then into her arms and wrist and her neck until she bleeds out completely into the lake. And she's chanting these ancient, whatever you want to call it. Maybe she's an ancestor of the Druids and she knows their language. There you go. That's her backstory. She's an ancestor of these Druids from centuries ago. Maybe like a lot of the Druids survived, but they kind of hid themselves from society. So she's chanting in a similar type of language, Rispolit, Scrunchulable, John Paulus, and a massive red storm clouds are forming over her as she's chanting Ada, John Paulus. Lightning flashes, thunder roars, and Ada shuts her eyes and levitates over the lake. All right. At the same time, in the country village nearby, we're drifting past rolling green pastures towards 2 dead townspeople who were hung by their necks on a post in the town square, probably by the English soldiers, I guess. Yeah, that's what I'm going for here. Maybe just because I've watched Braveheart like 100 times. That's what I'm trying to. My only knowledge of Scottish history is like from Braveheart. Sad to say, because I don't know how accurate that movie is, but there must be some relevance to it. All right. Nearby, these hanging townspeople, Soldier 1 and 2, snore against a barn door, their armor covered in blood from their acts of evil rape the night prior. The sky turns dark above them and blood rains down, burning like acid through their armor straight to the bone as they scream in agony and desperately try to open the barn door. The heavy winds push them away and pin them to the ground while the raining blood burns their faces clean off until only their skulls remain. So this is number 2 of the Curse of the Lake, and these soldiers are getting it in the form of this acidic blood that just burns through their armor, their metal armor, and burns through their skin and flesh and just leaves their skeletons in the middle of this town. So yeah, that's the second kind of dark, disturbing image, I guess, that we've seen so far. All right, that night, Ada's actually still alive. Ada is covered in blood from her sacrifice earlier, her blood ritual. So apologies, she didn't kill herself. She just gave a blood sacrifice to the lake. And now she's covered in blood from all these self-inflicted wounds. And she's staring directly into a tree like she's in an intense trance, not an inch of movement. Early morning sunlight the next morning is shining down on her as she's still staring directly into this tree like she didn't move an inch from the night before. Behind her is Ashin's grave and the Triquetra symbol. All right, now we're moving 6 months later. Ada is on the shoreline pregnant. So that's how you would show the passage of time. She now has a pregnant belly, probably like 6 months or 7 months, whatever you want to, I don't know. She's noticeably pregnant, about to burst, I guess. And she grabs a sharp rock and screams out in desperation. She lifts the rock high, thrusts it quickly down towards her pregnant belly, only to stop before impact, like some force is stopping her, while she stares at her reflection in the water. Ada, and she's like yelling these lines. All unholy alliance, be damned, here and now, once and all. She lifts the rock up once again, thrusts it down, but that supernatural force now blows the rock from her hands and launches it deep into a tree trunk, while she falls into the water and rolls around in a manic fit of rage, what am I going for here? Because it's probably kind of confusing. When she made the deal with this lake, whatever blood sacrifice to kill those soldiers that killed her lover, to get her vengeance and all that shit, she promised, I guess, or maybe the lake took her as a vessel and put a baby inside of her. Whatever evil spirits are in this fucking lake, causing people to maybe the druid priestess put this curse on. Maybe it was there even before her. There's some malevolent force within this lake, and that malevolent force, whatever it is, put a baby inside of her belly. So Ada is coming to terms with that. Like, I'm about to give birth to this evil entity, and she's not very happy about it. Maybe she's trying to perform an abortion herself, but the lake is the one like preventing her from doing this. So that's what I was going for. You could say, well, why doesn't she just leave and go somewhere else away from the lake? But I don't know, maybe there's some force keeping her there, or she's afraid to venture out because there's English soldiers everywhere. You can make up whatever you want there. Yeah, I try to have no plot holes, but I'm sure there's things I'm not thinking about that other people would point out. If other writers or horror fans, they would point out some things that are inconsistent with the story. But hopefully nothing too glaring. I feel like I put a lot of time to really prevent that, but sometimes there's things that you don't even realize until someone else points it out. All right, this is a few months later now. She's really about to burst. And we're following Ada as she's walking through heavy rainfall in this country village. Her pregnant belly now about to burst. There you go. She's walking up a muddy hill towards some country shacks in the distance, shivering in the cold rain and crying out in pain. She falls to her knees, holds her belly as dark, bloody fluids drip out from her womb and spread onto the soaked, muddy ground. She crawls to the front door of one of the shacks. With her last bit of strength, she's knocking on the door, falling over, and taking her last breath as the cries of two newborn babies echo into the darkness. So she actually gave birth to two twins here. All right. That same, we have a 18-year time cut here. So we could stay on that shack as maybe we see we're going above it, like a kind of a long shot above this shack as whoever lives there is opening the door. You would fade to black and then come back on that same shack and then have 18 years later. We're inside the shack now as Melise is 18 with red hair, and he's singing a joyous Scottish folk song with his mother and father. Sonny is his identical twin brother. So these were the two babies that Ada gave birth to. They're 18 years old now. Sonny is more morose as he sits alone in silence off in a corner. From behind, we notice a birthmark on his neck of 3 vertical lines of equal length, while the rest of the family finish the folk song and cheer. So I try to incorporate the 3 vertical lines, kind of like a birthmark, because Ada gassed herself 3 times when she performed that blood ritual in the lake. Now, the mother speaking to Melise, soon to be married, my son, spread our flock to these rolling pastures. Father, I make proud our family name. He starts up another merry Scottish folk song, and Melise and his mother quickly join in, while Sonny sits in silence, evil-eyeing his brother. So this family is celebrating that one of their sons is about to get married. The next day, Melise is tending to some sheep on the farm, humming a melody to himself, as Chani is chopping firewood nearby, gripping the axe tighter and tighter as he stares towards his twin brother. The shadowy figure of Davina, around 18 as well, innocent and beautiful, slowly approaches Melise as she reaches out her hands and covers his eyes. She's kind of being flirty now, Davina. Only when we wed will you be able to glance upon my eyes once again, Melise, my love. I could not wait another second. He turns, lifts her up, and kisses her while Sawney watches and violently swings the axe down into a chunk of wood. All right. Now, so there's a bit of a sibling jealousy there, I think. Later that day, we're back to the lake again. As Sawney walks along the shoreline, tossing stones into the water, 3 old women are washing clothing across the lake, gazing towards him while he washes his face in the water and gazes back. He stares at his reflection in the lake while demonic voices echo all around him. And he kind of has a vision here, or a hallucination, whatever you want to call it. In his mind, he's levitating over the lake in this trance, unable to control his movement. The 3 old women morph into grotesque evil witches with snakes in place of their hair like Medusas. Sawney lays on the shoreline now as the 3 old women encircle him and take their shirts off, revealing obscenely long, drooping breasts as they're about to, I don't know, rape him or some shit. This is the end of Sawney's vision. So I'm thinking over the years, people realize this lake is cursed and it becomes like a destination for witches to live around. If you're a witch, why would you not want to live near a cursed lake with these demonic spirits inside? So that's what I'm thinking. A lot of those types of characters will want to live around this area in the forest. So that's the end of his vision, just to freak people out there. Later that day, a bit later, Sawney is still by the lake washing his face, and he's still staring towards these 3 old women who he just hallucinated as these crazy evil witches. And ghostly arms are now reaching out towards him from the water, causing him to fall back into the lake. And as he does so, he cuts his arm on a rock. So unknowingly, his blood is dripping down into the lake as like a blood sacrifice now, while he stares back towards the 3 old women who are mysteriously gone now. So maybe this lake needs to have a blood sacrifice from time to time, and these witches maybe are working for it. That's what I was going for here. And even if it's an accident, maybe the lake kind of made this happen. And because Sawney is dripping his blood into this evil lake, it's like he's making a blood sacrifice without even knowing it. But he's also just a fucked up character, so he's probably not going to be too angry about it if he is kind of making a deal with this evil, the demonic entities that I don't even really know how to explain, of this fucking lake in Scotland. All right. Now Sawney, a little bit later, is walking towards a tree in a daze where he stands motionless, staring into the tree trunk like it was a black void, not an inch of movement. Moved to that night as Sawney is still staring at this fucking tree, unblinking, like he hasn't moved an inch all day, just like Ada's experience. His eyes finally blink and he walks away from the tree, past the lake, with a new sinister gleam in his eyes. Maybe that's a bit of the Blair Witch thing. At the end of the Blair Witch, the one guy is like up against the wall staring blankly, and you kind of know the witch is about to gut him or do some crazy shit to him. That's what I'm going for. When this lake kind of consumes this human vessel and kind of this curse kind of makes the human like a minion of the evil lake. That's kind of how I showed it. When it happened to her, she like was staring at this tree all day and all night, like she wasn't a different entity was taking over her body, just like it's happening to Sawney right now. Maybe a little different because I think Sawney was already a sick fucking dude. Remember, these are the offspring of Ada and whatever entity gave birth to these twins. So maybe one became good and one became Sawney. And it was almost like the lake is Sawney's father and calling him back, if you want to look at it like that, to do his evil tidings. All right. Now Sawney is back inside his shack, back at home, but we're drifting through the shadows, and all we hear is the chewing of flesh and the licking of fingers. This disgusting type of chewing sound. Through the candlelight, Sawney sits like a gargoyle in a pool of blood, chewing on his brother's severed arm, a bloody axe by his side. His mother and father lay dead nearby with some limbs chopped off and 3 vertical gashes sliced deeply into their torsos, necks, and backs. So we didn't see the scene where he went crazy with the axe and just killed his entire family. But we're watching the aftermath as he just goes cannibal style and eats his parents and eats his brother's body. So yeah, we're going back to the cannibalism because of that video I watched in the Scottish folklore about Sawney Bean or whatever his name was. So am I being too stupid by naming this character Sawney? Maybe I shouldn't name him that. It's like too obvious but whatever, man. Like, that could always be changed if people think it's stupid. If there was a famous cannibal in New Jersey named, I don't know, Harold the cannibal, doesn't have the same ring as Sawney. Sawney sounds like a cannibal. If you name your kid Sawney, sorry if your name's Sawney, but it's kind of a creepy name. Like, what if you named your kid Medusa? Do people name their kids like witchy names like that? Medusa, it's your turn for show and tell. And this little witchy girl just has like tarantulas and snakes. Medusa. I don't know. I think people still are named Ursula and names like that. Or Sabrina, because that was like the good witch. But do you name your kids like... I would like to meet a Medusa. Maybe there's no witchiness at all. Her parents just like the name Medusa. Alright, moving on. Alright, we just left this most disturbing scene so far as Sawney's eating his family. Later that night, Sawney, with his mouth covered in blood and guts, is tossing the body parts of his family into the lake. And then he walks off into the woods, where he stares back at that tree like a statue, not moving an inch. The next morning, Sawney is still staring like he hasn't slept at all. He's just staring at this fucking tree like a statue. Davina skips towards the water, where she's washing off some red berries in a basket while humming a peaceful melody to herself. Sawney's eyes suddenly blink, and he snaps out of his trance and walks away towards the lake, where Davina is calmly staring at her reflection in the water. Ada's face flashes next to her reflection, causing her to fall back in fright, spilling the red berries from her basket into the calm water. So it's kind of weird because Ada is also a part of that lake now. Her spirit is still kind of consumed by that lake, whatever ritual sacrifice she made to these evil spirits. And even when she died giving birth, somehow her spirit is still connected, almost like she's in prison for the rest of eternity to this lake to do whatever these entities want her to do. And plus she's Sawney's mother. So it's very weird in this type of scene here. Davina now turns her attention to Sawney, who's creeping towards her slowly, his teeth covered in disgusting gunks of human flesh. So he didn't brush his teeth after eating his family. Ada's, Ada's, I feel like the dentist should, you don't need to be told that. After you eat your family, you should probably floss your teeth. Ada's ghostly hands reach out towards her from the water and pull her closer. Now she's caressing her gently as she whispers something into her ear. Davina rises from the water and smiles flirtatiously at Sawney while he grabs a human toe from his pocket and bites into it like a snack. They walk off into the woods like a newlywed couple as we drift high above the lake towards the bright morning sunshine as some ravens take flight. Maybe this is because I love Game of Thrones. I wanted to put like bird symbolism. The ravens, like, I don't know. It adds some kind of element, I guess. Ravens or crows are very symbolic about death and witchcraft stuff. All right, so what does this scene represent? Originally, yeah, you see Davina, this innocent 18-year-old girl. She doesn't know that her fiance just got murdered by his twin brother or all this shit that happened. She's just washing these berries in this evil lake. And then Sawney approaches her. And you would think, uh-oh, she's about to get chopped up or eaten here. But whatever the lake whispers into her ear in the form of Ada, it's almost like brainwashing her to be a loyal wife now to Sawney. And that's what happens. They become a married couple, both with a bit of that curse inside of them. And they just start reproducing. Because now we are moving to 200 years later, the same cave as before, or maybe this is a new cave. I don't think we had any caves yet. We're in a cave near this lake, near this countryside, and we're drifting down from the sunshine towards a narrow cave hidden by the trees. Above the cave is an engraving of 3 vertical lines of equal length in the stone above the entrance, and superimposed is Scotland 1510. Just so you know, we're moving 200 years in the future now. Outside the cave, human legs, arms, ears, and torsos roast upon wooden sticks over a fire pit, while a small clan of men, women, and children sit around the fire waiting to feast, all filthy and similar in appearance with slight deformities. So you could go to The Hills Have Eyes here. This is a family of cannibals that trace their ancestry back to Sawney and Davina. So they're probably inbreeding here. And you could get as disturbing as you want with this short scene showing Sawney and Davina's ancestors. They're all fucked up, man. They're all cannibals. I think that was the story about the real Sawney being in Scotland. He lived in a cave, maybe with other inbred family members, and they would abduct certain people, and they were cannibals. I don't remember that story fresh in my head, or if it's just a bit of folklore to scare children with. Don't go towards the cave, children. Sawney Bean will get you and eat you like fucking Hansel and Gretel. Speaking of that, yeah, the remakes of Hansel and Gretel were amazing. I gotta give credit to those horror movies. There were maybe 1 or 2 remakes of Hansel and Gretel, and they did those really well, man. Huge influence on this. I'll have to watch it again because it's been a long time since I watched those. But there's a bit of that, because that's a freaky ass story about kids walking in the forest and then witches get them and fatten them up so they can eat them later. Like, that's one of the best horror stories of all time. It doesn't get much better than that, man. And they remade them. I forget what they were called. Maybe just Hansel and Gretel. But even as a kid, that was a great story. Hansel and Gretel. I gotta look this up because I just recalled now how great those movies were. Hansel and Gretel. I don't even know what to look up here. Remakes. Gretel and Hansel. That was in 2020. I think that's the one I'm thinking of. It was really well done, man. If you want to get freaked out and you like stuff like that, and it was only PG-13. If that's the one I'm thinking of. I kind of feel like there was another one too, but I don't remember. But yeah, I think I don't know. It got pretty good ratings. I'm not even sure if this is the one I'm thinking of, but I think it is. I just remember years ago I watched a remake of that story and it was really good. All right. Anyway, let's continue here. So we're following this inbred family of cannibals living in a cave. They're probably abducting farmers and hunters and whoever they can, and they just live off of human flesh. Or maybe they eat other stuff, but their main course is, or maybe during feast days, they just try to find people to eat. I don't know, man. It's not a big part of this story. I didn't really give them a full backstory like that. One of the young cannibal children rests his head on a filthy woman's lap who has a birthmark, but he has a birthmark on his neck of 3 vertical lines of equal length. So that's something that comes up throughout this story. This birthmark that started with Ada, continued with Sawney, and everyone in his family has these 3 vertical lines like a birthmark on various, usually on the back of their neck, I think. At the same time, we're moving away from the cave down to the lake nearby as a fisherman who's probably in his 30s is fishing into the lake, and he's got like a very old-fashioned wooden fishing rod that he probably made himself. This is still the 1500s. The fisherman's son, who's around 10, stands in the lake nearby, skipping rocks. The fisherman feels a bite and struggles to reel in the line as his son runs over. They pull on the line together, then walk into the shallow water in a fierce battle with whatever swims underneath. The fishing line snaps and the wooden rod breaks in two as they stand shocked, waist high in the water as a huge serpent is encircling them from underneath. Maybe this serpent is like another manifestation of this demonic cursed spirit. It can kind of take different forms, and sometimes it looks like this huge fucking monster, like the Loch Ness monster type of thing. The father and son sprint back towards the shoreline in a panic, only to fall over panting. 2 filthy men quickly approach them from the woods, 2 of these cannibals, carrying axes, both with similar birthmarks on their necks, 3 vertical lines of equal length. We drift high above the beautiful scenery, as all we hear is the fishermen's agonizing screams from below. So that's how they get their victims. They just pick off innocent people and survive off of human flesh like that. It's kind of a fucked up little aside, because this is not a really major part of this story, but I wanted to add some real, what I consider to be authentic Scottish mythology. Again, I'm from New Jersey. I don't know any Scottish people. I'm just going from what I hear on YouTube and shit like that. Hopefully a real Scottish person would have some additional comments on this and be like, yeah, that's pretty good. We were taught that as kids, or I don't know. I really don't know Scottish folklore, just like I don't know anything else. Russian folklore, Siberian shamanic stuff. I talk about this stuff, but I really don't know what I'm talking about. All right. Around the same time, we're now around the fire pit as we watch this clan of cannibals. And that's a good way to say it. The clan of cannibals. And they're eating all right, they're eating another body around the fire pit while we hear the fishermen screaming in agony. And this family, they start smiling towards each other while snacking on human flesh together. And the smiling soon develops into manic laughter while one older woman checks on the roasting body parts above the fire and another bites into a human ear. So that's how I set this up. These people, they're inbred, they're cannibals, they're around the fire pit eating another person's body, and then they hear the fishermen screaming from below near the lake. So they're realizing, all right, we got another body to eat, and they just start smiling and laughing just to make it real creepy, man. All right, so now we drift over the peaceful lake as more chopping of flesh echoes from the shore. They're chopping up the body probably at this point. All right, now this is the last scene of this flashback that's taken almost an hour to read through. I really want to get all these things to avoid confusion, all the little details that I'm talking about. All right, the last scene is nighttime over the lake as a shadowy figure is tossing human remains into the lake as an offering, while demonic moaning echoes from underneath the water. So that's also a big part of this. Whatever this entity is beneath the lake, it needs to feed on blood. And so to accomplish these goals, I guess it kind of consumes the spirit of these bodies, of these people. And maybe that's why I wanted to give birth through Ada, so it could have a human minion in Sawney, and then Sawney spread his seed. So these are all like the offspring of Ada, but it's also the offspring, these cannibals, they're the offspring of whatever evil force is associated with this fucking lake, man. That's what I'm going for. It needs a blood offering. And throughout this story, you'll see that as a continuing theme, that they're constantly throwing body parts into the lake, like to feed this supernatural spirit. But that's the end of this flashback that I called Origin of the Cursed Lake. So it took about 12 pages to get through it. So after all of that, and I think it's a cool opening, the first 10 to 15 minutes of all those little scenes there would really set the mood as we enter the actual story now. We haven't entered the actual story until page 12, almost page 13, really. The actual story does not involve any of the characters we just saw that we just spent all this time talking about. The actual story involves the very first scene, those two characters, Flora and Hilda. And now we're back over the lake after this long sequence of flashback. And superimposed is Scotland, 1880. So we've been through how many years? 60 AD till now we're in 1880, the present day for this story. As we meet Flora, she's 10 years old, red hair, kind of vain, and she hides in the bushes along the shore, breathing heavily, while a shadowy figure approaches her. It's her twin sister, Hilda, somber, a mole on her left cheek. So Hilda's kind of the quiet, reserved one with the mole on her cheek. Flora is more of the vivacious, confident, almost a little bit of vanity within her. Hilda. So the two twins are playing hide and seek near the lake. Hilda, found you. Flora, sore from from losing the game of hide and seek, pins Hilda down and rubs dirt in her face. Flora, wicked cheat, was peeking you, was peeking. Hilda cries and tries to push her off. Hilda, was not. Flora, peeking, cheater you is. Hilda, was not. Flora, get off, get off. Flora smacks her mole over and over. Flora, always be the ugly sister. And she's kind of singing like to mock her. Never to be married, never to be married. Hilda grabs a handful of dirt and tosses it into her eyes, sending Flora running off into the woods crying. Flora, Papa, Papa. So yeah, I wanted to set this up from the beginning that these are twin sisters, and what do kids do when they're that age, and how do they like insult each other? I wanted to show that from the very beginning when we meet these two characters that we're going to spend the rest of these 30 pages with. Moments later, we're still by the lake as Hilda cries out in agony, stretched out across a man's lap as he smacks her in the rear with a leather strap. The man, her father, laden in his 40s with long dirty hair, a habitual drunk, puts the strap down. Laden, shut up with the wailing now, girl. I'm not going to try to do Scottish accents. All I can do is try to picture how a Scottish person would talk in this situation in the late 1800s. What am I basing this on? It's a good question. I really don't know. My imagination of what people in Scotland were talking like in the late 1800s. It's not really based on anything, really. Maybe I had some Scottish witch inside of me leading me to these lines of dialogue, like, shut up with the wailing now, girl. Yeah, I'm not trying to make fun of the Scottish accent. It is kind of attractive and cool to me. But I'm not going to try to do it throughout this story because I would just sound really stupid. I don't know. British people can do American accents. Like I mentioned Kate Winslet. She was in that HBO series where she played the Philadelphia woman, detective or some shit. But how many times do American actors get to do British accents? Like, I guess that happens if you're doing like Shakespeare stuff. All right. But yeah, I'm not going to try to do a Scottish accent here. I'm just going to sound like Willie, groundskeeper Willie, and that's probably kind of insulting to the Scottish language. Grease me up, woman. All right. Flora happily watches her sister's beating from the shoreline. So she's got kind of an evil streak in her too. She's taking pleasure in watching her sister get beaten by their father, while she sticks her tongue out, then skips merrily away. Flora, ha ha, you have to learn your lesson, Hilda. Ha ha, teach her, Papa. Laden strikes Hilda harder with the leather strap. Or, I'm sorry, I'm totally mixing these characters up. I'm confusing myself now. So Flora is the vain one. Hilda is more of the somber one. Yeah. So Flora was the one teasing her the whole time when they were playing hide and seek. But even though Hilda ran away and she was crying, the father is punishing Hilda. All right. So yeah, so he's kind of playing favorites. He's kind of more attached to his one daughter over the other one. And Hilda loves it. Hilda kind of takes pleasure in watching Flora get her butt beat. So Laden is striking Hilda even harder now. Laden. Actions be fetching consequences. Hilda, tears in her eyes, stares towards the shoreline as Flora joyously scampers farther away. Laden. Them the rules we all heed. We now drift through the calm lake water, like some spirit or spirits was calling out to Hilda. Female whispers from the lake as a voiceover. Hilda, Hilda. Leiden smacks her rear once more. Leiden. I don't punish you now, lass. You will never learn how to survive in this wild. I don't even know if people use language like that. Is that stupid American interpretation? Like Scottish people will call each other lassie. I don't fucking know. Whatever, man. These could be worked out later. If maybe you get real Scottish people to play these roles, obviously that would work the best. All right, a little bit later, moments later, Hilda is walking along the shoreline, wincing in pain as she rubs her sore rear. She stares at her reflection in the calm water and washes her face as Ada's ghostly reflection appears. Before she notices, the shadowy figure of Angus, 12, startles her from behind. Like even naming a character Angus is kind of like, well, I can't think of any Scottish names. Oh yeah, there was a dude from, well, AC/DC, that was like Australian. I don't know, maybe he's got Scottish ancestry. But that's the most like generic Scottish name. I need to think of a Scottish character. Just name him Angus. So Angus is like another small kid, 12-year-old kid, and he approaches Hilda from behind. Hey, Hilda. Hilda nervously turns towards him as they share some moments of awkward silence. Angus, joking. Don't get too close now. Lady of the Lake preys on both the young and old, whether asking or not. He hands her some blue flowers. Angus, go ahead. Take these for good luck then. She grabs the flowers and runs off in embarrassment as he watches her with a puzzled expression. Angus, Hilda, where are you running? Hilda. Like, I compare this to anything. Like, what if I was basing this story in Nigeria or Jamaica or Turkey or Romania? Like, I don't know how to write these characters. I'm just trying to do the best I can to make it believable. If this was in Romania, and I actually do have a later story with like Romanian characters. I think so. Like, I think I was going for Transylvania type of thing. So I'm doing the best I can to picture how Scottish people would speak naturally in the late 1800s like this. All right. Now we're inside a cottage where the two sisters are in their bedroom. So their family cottage. It's nighttime. The twin sisters are playing with dolls in a dollhouse as Flora grabs Hilda's doll and paints a dot on the doll's cheek. Flora, teasing, now she looks just like you. She dances around the room, mock singing, little mole piggy face, little mole piggy face, ha ha. You know, how kids tease each other. She oinks as Hilda runs out of the room crying. Moments later, Hilda is wiping away her tears, staring at her reflection in the mirror. So if you're trying to picture these two characters, they look identical. Flora is kind of the bitchy one, and Hilda has the mole on her face, and she barely says anything. She's more of the shy, reserved child. We're now in the parents' bedroom as Hilda sits on her mother's bed in much better spirits, while her mother, Bridget, she's in her 40s, braids her hair and hums a gentle melody to her. The mother squeezes Hilda from behind with maternal love as she giggles with joy, just as a raven flies by the window. And Bridget is whispering to Hilda, best to be leaving offerings for the wise women of the night, for winter comes calling. Bridget tosses bread out the window for the birds, then sits back down, tickles her belly, and kisses Hilda's mole. Playfully, like she's just tickling her daughter here. She holds up a mirror with the triquetra symbol on the back and stares at the reflection of her and Hilda together. Bridget, you become more beautiful than your own mother, right before my very eyes. She hugs her tightly while Hilda touches a birthmark on the back of her neck of 3 vertical lines of equal length. So yeah, we're noticing that Bridget must be an ancestor of Sawney, but you just think about it. The Sawney and his ancestors of cannibals and their connection to the lake and this evil curse, they began in the 1500s and they kept going and surviving through all the shit that happened in that time period. They survived up until this point, but I guess now some of their ancestors probably left the cannibal clan and married outside the family. And Bridget is one of those people. Whether she knows that her ancestors were cannibals, I kind of leave it up in the air. I don't explain this backstory, but she is a member of that cannibal clan with a connection to the lake. Maybe she left when she was young and she wanted to get away from these fucking creepy inbred cannibals. I'm sure that's a possibility. If you're born into a family like that and your only future is to fuck your family and to have inbred sex and to make these deformed individuals, I almost feel like I have to apologize. If anyone listening to this are inbred, I'm not trying to make fun of you. But yeah, it's probably not wise to have sex with your family. I don't think it leads to good bloodlines, and it probably does have real physical consequences and deformities and mental illness and shit. So yeah, maybe I don't have to apologize for that. But yeah, you can tell right here, but we just met these people and we know, okay, she has that same birthmark. So she has a connection to Sawney and these fucking cannibals that maybe they got raided by some police force. And they're like, all right, we got to get rid of these cannibal families. They're just snatching up fishermen and killing these people, eating them. They're having sex with each other, and they're not bringing the image of Scotland that we really want to present to the world. The Scottish Open, we have all this crazy shit in Scotland. We don't need Sawney and his family of inbred cannibals ruining it for the rest of us. God damn it. We already have groundskeeper Willie giving Scottish people a bad name on The Simpsons. So maybe around the 16 or 1700s, maybe the townspeople raided the cannibals and tried to kill them all off, but maybe some of them escaped. Who the fuck knows, man? Somehow Bridget is still a member of that ancestry. She has the blood of Sawney and the cursed lake within her. So, yeah, that's what that's meant to show. And we're back in the sister's bedroom a little bit later that night. Layden, I'm not sure how to say his name, Layden, sits against the wall with a flask of whiskey at his side. Another stereotype of Scottish and Irish people. In the middle of a scary story. So he's telling his 2 daughters like a scary story at nighttime, like a ghost story. Layden. The man ran into the bushes. Desperate he was that night for hiding. Hilda and Flora are sitting anxiously on their beds. Layden. He carried an axe, for he was a logger like your good old da. Hilda cuddles closer to her pillow while he takes a swig of the whiskey. Layden. Moonlight blocked by monstrous cloud cover as he pressed on, until a cave appeared, hidden behind some rowan trees. Out in the hallway at the same time, Bridget is drinking a cup of tea, her ear pressed to the bedroom wall as she listens to Leiden's story and rolls her eyes. All right, I put exterior, but yeah, these are definitely interior. I don't know why. That was just a typo. Back inside the sister's room. Maybe you're filming this from outside through the window. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking there. It's just a typo. Hilda and Flora are staring towards Leiden as they grip harder onto their blankets as he continues the story. Leiden, but the Rowan, my dears, provided no protection. He rises and creeps towards them. Leiden, for on that accursed night, as the man crawled towards the cave opening, a force from the lake lifted his body into the night sky. Flora gasped. Flora, you lie, Papa, only to frighten. Leiden, no lie, sweet lass, the witch of the lake. Just then, Bridget is rolling her eyes from the hallway as she sips her tea, and we hear Leiden continue the story. We only hear his voice as we're watching Bridget now. Ripped the poor logger's heart clean out from his chest, ate his flesh, and left only his bones for his horrified loved ones to discover in the morn. Bridget sighs to herself. Here it goes again. That's her voice talking to herself. Just then, Flora and Hilda scream in fright on their beds, while Leiden creeps closer towards them. Leiden, and to this very night, the lake, calm as it appears in the daylight, ever scours the area for her next victim. He tickles Flora's stomach. Leiden, will it choose you next, lass? Flora and Hilda scream and hug each other in fear as Bridget walks in sipping her tea. Bridget, all right. That is plenty enough nonsense for one night. Stop filling these girls' heads with rotted tales of some logger's drunken escapade. Hilda runs to her mother's side and hugs her leg tightly. Bridget, pay no heed to this misinterpreted drivel. The wise woman of the lake offers only nature's righteous providence. Leiden swips his flask of whiskey, then kisses her on the cheek. Leiden, aye, my very own wise woman of the lake, quick to bed with you now. He kisses the birthmark on her neck, while she smiles and pushes him away. Bridget, enough with your whiskey breath. He kisses her again playfully, pats her ass, and stumbles out. So he's kind of drunk here. While she carries Hilda into her bed, and tucks her in. Bridget, sweet dreams, my dear girls, of green fields and flights with doves. Flora cozies into her blanket. Flora, I wish to meet the woman of the lake. Bridget, quiet now. Nature does not always grant us such wishes. Flora, but I'm not frightened. Bridget kisses Flora on the forehead and tucks her in. Bridget, one day, soon enough, for our path is already written in the stars. She walks away. Bridget, good night now, my loves. So yeah, I don't know how to really explain that part of it. The part that Bridget is a part of the Sawney family, the ancestry of Sawney and the cannibals, and the connection to Ada and the lake, and the connection to the beginning of the first scene with the druids, and the first scene, the other later on with the Ada and the Sheen, and all these different legends involving this fucking lake. And maybe folklore kind of evolves over the years. Now it's just about witches around the lake. That's how people interpret this lake now, that there must be some wicked kind of witch that lives inside the lake. So they call it the woman of the lake. So I don't even think Bridget knows really, that she's connected to this curse. Maybe she passed it down to her own kids. That's kind of where I'm going with this storyline, because you'll see how, as it goes a little bit farther, I'll get to explain this a little bit more, I guess. But a lot of these questions get answered later. But I figured I'll be preemptive and kind of deal with some of these things, because it's confusing to me. I haven't read this in 4 years, and I'm still pretty confident in the devices I've used to create this story. But of course, you can make it more clear. But also, sometimes the mysterious quality is what you need in a horror film like this. Later today, if I finish this by, I don't know, 5, 6 o'clock, maybe I'll watch The Witch, the Robert Eggers movie, The Witch. Because I feel like that movie is connected to this, and I never even watched the whole thing. But I think it has the same type of time period, maybe. All right, we're on page 19 now, where we're back to the lake, the forest around the lake, as Layden is chopping down a tree. He's a logger, while Morrison, in his 30s, snaps off the smaller branches. So he's like snapping the small branches from the ground, and I don't know, whatever they're doing as loggers. Morrison begins this dialogue. Forward thinkers, Layden, futures in the city. Where the real money will come to surface, the true wealth. Layden sighs and wipes sweat from his brow. So they've been working like all morning, chopping down trees and other shit. There's probably a bunch of trees laying on the ground at this point around the lake. Layden, city full of empty promise. Traditions stay traditions for a reason. Layden points towards an old woman by the lake who washes her clothes in the calm water. Layden, her, for example, try to explain the new city ways to a hag like that, and probably be cursed with final plague. And be cursed with final plague. I'm not sure how I like that line better said, but you get the idea. Morrison laughs to himself. Morrison, even more reason to run towards the city life. I don't even know if Scottish people say that. Is that a Scottish thing or an English thing? I don't know. You can manipulate these lines to make it as realistic as possible, as authentic to how the Scottish language is from that time period, or whatever, it's not that long ago. It's only the late 1800s. All right, this old woman near the lake is now creeping towards the two men as they chop down another tree. Old woman by the lake. Take and take and take, then take some more. And what do you cretins offer back? This woman who's very haggard, but she's got a very forceful voice, kind of creepy like that. That's how I picture her. This woman is grabbing some of the tree branches off the ground and tossing them towards Layden, who easily deflects them away. Layden, survive winter without firewood, will ya? Under his breath, you spoiled hag. Old woman by the lake, survived more winters than 14 of your lifetimes. She creeps inches from his face and pats him on the chest. Old woman by the lake, whispering in his ear. The fire that burns within keeps the stream fulfilled through the boldest of winter's chill. She licks his face with her disgusting tongue, while Layden stands frozen in shock and disgust. Old woman by the lake, whispering, do not claim the earth's warmth as your own, for that your guts will spill out like a demon's billow. This I tell you true. He wipes her spit off his face, gently shoves her away, and raises his axe up. Layden, hag, be gone with you now. Interrupt my work long enough. Curse me if you will, but beware the sharp edge of my arduous labor. She lifts up her shirt and flaps her obscenely long, drooping breast while laughing maniacally towards him. Old woman by the lake, my days of cursing fools like you have long passed me, but you shall damn your own bloodline by decree of nature's unbeknownst chaos. Layden and Morrison avert their eyes as she walks away, flapping her breast in the breeze. Morrison, kind of joking now, to bring this very disturbing scene to a comedic conclusion. Morrison, to the city life, Layden. No more of this sick and twisted heritage. He spits out phlegm, grabs Layden's flask, takes a long swig of the whiskey, and then tosses it back to him. Layden, I might concede my grounds now, after the spectacle of those drooping titties. He swigs the flask, then violently swings his axe into another tree nearby. Again, it's just another short scene. We get to know Morrison, we get to know Layden a little bit more, and we meet another one of the witches that kind of is right at home around this cursed lake. It's a hot spot. All the witches hang out there. This lake that has some cursed spirit inside of it through the centuries from the Druids. Maybe these are all ancestors of the Druids that kind of, some of them stay true to the old ways, some of them are moving away from the witchcraft. That's the whole symbolism of this dialogue living in this area. I'm sure there's a lot of talk all the time about the cursed lake, the woman of the lake, and a lot of the pagan druid undertones. I don't even know if is that how you describe druids? Are they pagans? Like, I don't want to say something that isn't accurate. Are druids pagans? Because I don't even know what pagan really means. I just picture like I made that scene earlier. All right, druidry is generally considered a form of contemporary paganism or a nature religion. So yeah, this fits in, man. Modern druids operate within the broader pagan umbrella, focusing on reverence for nature, Celtic traditions, and spiritual non-dogmatic practices. All right, so yeah, I don't think I'm insulting druidry. I don't even know I didn't know that was a word until right now. It's more about nature-based spirituality, which I'm trying to put into this story and develop the more horrifying side of that. I'm sure there's beautiful rituals as well to a lot of these ancient ways, but also there's that more sinister side. You could look at, what was I just thinking of? Shit, I forget now. But with any ancient tradition, a lot of people will represent it. They'll get an image of that in their head of blood sacrifices and human sacrifice. But I'm sure there were also plenty of beautiful type of harmonious type of spiritual practices that probably doesn't get shown as much because of horror movies. The way folklore has been presented in horror movies throughout the century, since the beginning of the Twilight Zone. There's probably some relevance to all that stuff. Maybe it's a bit unfair. I'm doing it too. I'm presenting this story about druids and the curse of this lake in Scotland, and I'm really just trying to make it as horrific as possible because it's perfect for a cinema. There's a reason horror movies never die. Movies like this, you can trace it back to the Wicker Man and other folklore. I talked about that documentary on Amazon, which I didn't watch. I watched the first 30 minutes and then I forgot about it again. whatever it was called. But maybe, maybe when I'm done with this project, I can spend more time um, reinvestigating all of these ancient type of movies, or what I'm trying to say, the movies that really started the horror genre. And because I look at it like Rosemary's Baby and movies like that, because that's from the late 60s. And I guess there's some truth to that. There is a ancestry of movies like that can be traced. Woodlands Dark and the Days Bewitched. I can never remember that title. Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched. It's a 3-hour documentary. You can get it on Amazon or other places. About, I think I purchased this after watching Midsummer because I was obsessed with that movie when I saw it. And it goes through the history of folk horror, everything I'm talking about now, in a very uneducated way, because I don't know really what I'm talking about. If you watch a documentary like that, it will supply you with a lot of background information of how the horror genre, where did the Wicker Man come from? It really isn't just a fictional account. It actually is based on folklore. There were tribes that did human sacrifice, blood rituals, fertility rituals, and all of that pagan stuff found its way into modern religions in different ways, or found its way in modern culture in ways that might be hidden that people don't even realize. Let me finish reading this. I'll read about, how many pages is this? It's 47 pages, so I'll read a couple more pages, then I'll finish part 2 later. Once I start talking for about 2 hours, I get a little bit like I need to take a break and refresh my brain a little. So I'm at 2 hours and 10 minutes about. So I'm starting to get to that point, but I've done a lot of commentary already. Let me read these last 2 pages, and then I'll find a good place to end this part 1. All right, but this is the good part of the story. The first 12 pages was difficult for me to read because I'm setting up this origin of where this cursed lake came from, which I was trying so hard to create an original type of a horror story like that. I wanted to have some kind of a reoccurring curse around this area in Scotland based on this lake. And that was more difficult to write for me. I didn't know how to draw people in to this story without getting confused like I was doing. I kept confusing myself, and eventually, once you get to the main story of Hilda and Flora and how they interact with this curse, then it becomes a lot easier of a narrative, because we already kind of experience what this lake can do to people. It can take control of their minds and body and claim them as a vessel. And that's really what I'm going for here. And that plays into the pagan mentality, that the paganism is so entrenched in spirituality and nature, not so much on rules and dogma and what organized religion represents of that structure of a society. I don't think paganism has any history of organizing itself by rules and commandments and social taboo. I'm sure there's parts of that even within the ancient Druids, whether or not their history really survived over those thousands of years ago. I kind of remember reading that book, and maybe the Druids, there isn't a lot of books that were from that time period to kind of explain what the Druids really represented, besides like Roman Roman historians kind of wrote about them in their history books. But I kind of feel like I'm correct in that assessment that the Druid history is kind of lost unless maybe you have ancestry and you have that firsthand knowledge, well, passed down from the generations. I just want to look that up really quick. Is the history of Druids kind of hidden or lost in time? Is the history of the Druids lost in time? Let's see what that comes up. Well, not completely lost. The history, again, this is according to Google. The history of the ancient Druids is heavily obscured by time, largely because they relied on oral tradition and recorded nothing themselves. Most surviving knowledge comes from biased Roman enemies like Julius Caesar or later Christian romanticized accounts. So I think I'm kind of on the same level there. I don't think you can have a historical account based on the Druids' perspective because I don't think they did that. It's very interesting. That makes it even more mysterious and intriguing. Like, they didn't want people to know the secrets of their ancient culture. Are there ancestors today that can trace themselves back? I'm sure there is. The Roman government back in those days actively suppressed Druid orders in the first century, destroying their power base. So I don't think I'm that far off when I had that scene in the beginning with the invading Roman army and they want to get rid of the Druid culture because, I don't know, maybe they're freaked out by it. Maybe they were like powerful priests that could do this crazy, cast these spells, and the Romans were like, all right, we got to get rid of this shit. Yeah, I don't know. The Druids were the educated elite class of Celtic society, serving as priests, judges, teachers, and philosophers. They originated in Britain and modern France, Gaul. They believed in immortality of the soul, transmigration of souls, and they held oak trees and mistletoe as sacred. All right. Again, this is coming from Google. I'm not reading like from a book right now. So maybe this is true, maybe it's not. And I don't know if was Druidry, is that how you say it? Was Druidry involved with ritual sacrifice or blood sacrifice? Involved with, because that is a big part of this too, but I feel like any type of ancient pagan tradition, there was good and bad, so it probably is in any tradition. I'm pretty sure this is going to say yes. Was Druidry involved with blood ritual? I won't even put sacrifice. But that's kind of the same thing. Based on ancient Roman accounts, so this is coming from the Roman historians, ancient Druidry likely involved blood sacrifices, human sacrifice, as part of their religious practice. While Roman sources may have exaggerated these practices for means of propaganda, other evidence, such as the Lindau man, indicates ritual killings around that period. I don't know what period this really is. Writers like Julius Caesar reported that the Celts believed the gods favored the sacrifice of criminals or captives, with Druids often leading these ceremonies. Yeah, I need to really, when I wrote this, I barely dipped my toes into this, and I should have gotten more involved with other movies that deal with Druidry and pagan stuff. I've never even watched Wicker Man. Maybe I'm too afraid to watch it, because movies like that are the most disturbing, I think. Cannibalism, human sacrifice, stuff like that, yeah. Because that shit actually happened. You could say that, what's the Mel Gibson movie? Ah, shit. The one that he made about the Aztecs, and then at the end, you see the Spanish about to land in Mexico. I guess that was Cortez. I don't know. I can't think of that movie. It's a good movie, and I watched it a couple times. And whatever that's called, Mel Gibson movie. There's a bunch of scenes in that where the Aztecs are about to sacrifice people. Apocalypto, yeah, all right, from 2006. And you could say that's a bit of a horror movie because what's more horrific than that? If you were around in that time period, if you believe in reincarnation and past life regressions, maybe that's why maybe that's why certain people are so affected by movies like that. There's scenes in that movie where the Aztecs are like marching these people up to the temple and they're about to stab them in the heart and rip their heart out and hold it up to the crowd. And supposedly that was a thing, as like sacrifice to the sun god for whatever, for a good harvest or for whatever they were doing it for. And yeah, what's more horrific than that? Like, you want to talk about classism? I'm sure the upper crust of that society weren't the ones being sacrificed. It's all the peasants and the poor people. We need to make 600 sacrifices. It's almost like laying people off. Like that's kind of a representation of sacrificing people sometimes. Back in the Aztec days, they would find 600 poor people, sacrifice them to their sun god, and be done with it. Maybe it was population control. Maybe it was to keep power and to keep people on edge. Like, oh, fuck, I hope I don't become one of the people sacrificed. Maybe they really believed in that. Maybe some people were happy to be sacrificed, I guess. They really wanted to sacrifice themselves. I doubt it. They just pick all these poor people and be like, all right, we need 600 people this quarter to be sacrificed to our sun god. And it's kind of similar to today. Like, you hear those reports on the news. Amazon lays off 60,000 people. That's the sacrifice. That's the yearly sacrifice that the 1% needs to continue their reign. The Illuminati, as they have sex with babies on Epstein's Island and fucking pray to Moloch in the Bohemian Grove. So yeah, you could point to a lot of horrific folklore and paganism in anything, really. You can find remnants of it in so much of modern society. And it's just great for horror movies. What else could I really do with the folklore of the past? It doesn't fit into science fiction too much unless you blend the genres together and you kind of make a science fiction / horror movie. I guess you could kind of approach it from a comedy if you could find a good enough story. All right. Where did we leave off here? I want to read a couple more pages. All right. Lydon and Morrison were just in the woods chopping down the trees. They had the encounter with the disgusting witch, the old woman by the lake with the drooping titties. Now, a little bit later in the day, Bridget is leaving a bowl of milk on the shoreline, and then she's putting her feet in the lake, shutting her eyes and humming a peaceful melody to herself. Nearby, we're back at that cave again. This is Sawney's cave, but no longer, there's no people anymore. His ancestors have spread out through Scotland or wherever. So we're back at Sawney's cave. Flora and Angus are chasing Hilda playfully through this wooded area as they find the cave. And I guess they're playing hide and seek again, or whatever kids are playing in Scotland in the 1800s. Flora, careful, Angus. Hilda is a no good cheat, she is. Angus runs off alone, trips over a branch, and then he lands face to face with the cave opening, hidden behind some of the bushes. He gazes up towards 3 vertical lines of equal length engraved above the entrance. Angus, Hilda, Flora, quick, come see. They both run over out of breath. Flora, what is it? Angus, come on. He walks into the darkness of the cave. Angus, treasures not be found by cowards. Flora pushes Hilda towards the opening. Flora, go see, Hilda. I'll keep guard out here. Hilda sighs, then reluctantly follows her sister's orders and walks inside the cave after Angus. Inside the cave, Hilda is treading carefully through the shadows, following Angus's heavy breathing. Angus, come on, Hilda. Must be some treasure hidden. Hilda uses the cave wall as a guide as she walks past the large drawing of 3 long vertical lines of equal length, then crouches forward and leans on a rock, unaware of the human skeletal remains piled behind. So they're kind of in total darkness here. A few yards ahead, Angus feels something crawling on him, then screams with all his might and sprints back towards the entrance. Angus, back, go back, Hilda. Angus now rolls out of the cave. We're back outside the cave, swatting all these worms off his clothing. Hilda follows soon after, wiping worms from her hair and face as she runs through the woods in a panic. Flora and Angus laughing at her expense. So yeah, they both run out. They have all these dozens of worms all over their body and face. And then Angus gets them all off, and they're laughing at Hilda as Hilda freaks out, like any 10-year-old girl would if she's covered in worms. All right, so Hilda just keeps running and running. Eventually, she ends up at the lake. So this cave is kind of close to that lake, like I said in the beginning, where we saw Sawney and his inbred family eating the human flesh. Down at the lake, Bridget is tossing red berries into the water, almost like a symbolic blood sacrifice. Maybe that becomes a ritual later, instead of people actually sacrificing their blood. They're just doing stuff like that as a ritual. Kind of symbolic of how paganism merges with an organized religion and changes the ceremonies or changes some of the witchy elements. You just look at the Catholic Mass back when it was in Latin, it was probably creepier. If you listen to the Catholic Mass in Latin, it probably made people think of more of the pagan aspects, more of the witchcraft stuff. But you turn it to English or other languages and it becomes a totally different service. I've never experienced a Latin Mass, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But I feel like it is creepier if you have the ancient language. It makes it more, I don't know, what's the word? It makes it more mysterious, yeah. And, they have the incense going during the Mass, they're ringing the bells, they're chanting these things and singing songs. If it's all in an ancient language, it gives it a different perspective. Like, I'm sure there's still some Catholic, really hardcore traditional Catholics that still use the Latin Mass because they like the old ways. They like the old pagan beliefs and all that shit. So I'm sure it still exists. I just never experienced that shit. I think it stopped in the 60s, so that was way before my time. If I'm right. When did the Latin Mass changed to other languages. It's not only English, because I guess it just went to native tongue. When did the when did the Latin Mass stop? I'm pretty sure it was not that long ago. Probably in the 60s. Because how many people learn Latin anymore? Some people did in my high school, but I don't think a lot of people take Latin. When did the Latin Mass stop being so popular? All right, the Catholic Church shifted from celebrating Mass almost exclusively in Latin to more localized vernacular languages. Yeah, in the early 60s, the Second Vatican Council, 62 through 65, with the new order of Mass introduced in 64 and fully implemented in 1970, while Latin still remains the official language of the Roman Rite, the vernacular became the standard practice for daily worship. So yeah, it's another evolution, modernizing stuff, I guess. I guess that was the real reason they did that. It's not banned though. I guess the Latin Mass is not entirely banned and remains permitted under specific regulations. Whatever that means, I don't know. So that's kind of interesting. All right, so now we're following Bridget down at the lake. She's tossing these red berries into the water. She's humming to herself as Hilda is still running, covered in sweat. Maybe she still has some more worms caught in her hair. And Bridget is saying, "Catch your breath now, child, or are you all of a sudden a wild beast inside?" Hilda grabs tightly onto her torso, still catching her breath. They sit down on the shoreline together and they both toss berries into the water. So that is a symbolic thing. Mother and daughter are tossing these red berries into the water, reminiscent of like a blood sacrifice. Hilda, am I ever to be married? And that's kind of weird for a 10-year-old to say, but back then, probably people got married when they were like 14, 15, 16. It was a different time, even in the late 1800s. People weren't preparing for their career and going to college. They're becoming of age after puberty. They're getting married when they're like 14, 15, 16. I don't think I'm saying anything out of line there. In the 1800s, the late 1800s, yeah, most of the public weren't going to college or trying to set out a career path before having kids. Your purpose was just to reproduce, your main purpose. You could see how much culture has shifted. How many people get married now when they're 16? Like, I don't know anybody. Or people get married before they even graduate high school. Usually it's just unplanned pregnancies and shotgun weddings. But so a 10-year-old girl in 1800s in Scotland, I don't think it's that radical to be thinking about marriage. What else do you have to think about? You don't have social media. You don't have video games or television. Your only knowledge of city life is maybe from like a couple books that happen to pass your way. But I don't even think these people go to school. They're just homeschooled, or maybe there's a school nearby, but I didn't really go into that. But yeah, that time period, you have to kind of put yourself in the shoes of a 10-year-old girl. She probably already knows how to cook and do all these things that kids today don't know. And when you're 10, you're probably already thinking, when am I going to get married? It's kind of weird, but I don't think it's that far off. Bridget laughs and tickles Hilda's armpits. Bridget, enough now with that foolishness. Keep to your youthful thoughts. These days will all disappear too soon, my love. So even the mother's like, don't think about that. Don't think about that shit now. Enjoy your juvenile youth of of whatever the hell you're doing as a kid. Don't think about these adult things yet. So Bridget kisses her on the forehead, as Hilda says. But Flora said, Bridget cuts her off. Have not worry what your sister's teasing. Keep your focus on nature's gifts. They toss more berries into the lake while staring at their reflections in the water. Bridget, and on what gifts you provide back to her. So she's finishing that thought. Keep your focus on nature's gifts and on what gifts you provide back to her. Hilda shuts her eyes and has a quick vision at nighttime over the same lake. Her vision is of Hilda as an 18-year-old. The very first scene of this story. She's having that vision, almost like a premonition. Is that the right word? Where you have a vision of the future. She's picturing her sister. Right? Where am I here? Yeah, she's picturing herself. I'm sorry. She's picturing herself when she's 18. This is Hilda. Even I'm getting confused with Hilda and Flora now. She's picturing herself when she's 18, levitating over the lake, as she grips a bloody kitchen knife in her hand. Around her, there's human arms and legs and torsos and feet floating up to the surface, like these dismembered body parts, surfacing to the lake around her. Almost like the spirits inside the lake, they were offered these body parts and they ate the flesh, and now they're done with it and they're throwing away the bones. And around her are all these body parts, and a whirlpool forms, and all these fires are erupting along the shore. So it's a very dark premonition here that Hilda's having of her future life. All right, how far do I want to go? I'm going to read one more scene and then stop. All right, the last scene is back on the countryside as Hilda's getting out of her gaze now, her daze, her premonitions over. Her eyes open and she quickly snuggles tightly into her mother's chest as Bridget hums a soothing melody to calm her down, as the spirits in the lake seem to watch their embrace from under the water. So it's almost like they're always being watched. You could have an interesting camera angle here as mother and daughter are embracing and humming this melody together. And maybe you show like the perspective of the lake water, like something underneath is watching this. And Bridget must have a connection to because of that birthmark on her neck and her connection to Sawney. She's probably just naturally drawn to this lake because her family bloodline were a bunch of inbred cannibals. Maybe she luckily got out of that curse, but she's still connected to it. And I'm thinking even this melody that she's humming right now would have some relevance later. Maybe it's kind of a melody that she always hums in a lot of the scenes she's in, and it becomes the Wraith's refrain later. I'm not sure if I want to do that yet. But there might be a connection there, because I said you have to, I didn't get to that part yet. In part 2 of this, I'm going to stop here. I'm on page 23, at the bottom of page 23. I'll stop right here and finish the rest later. In the second part of this story, it becomes more about the actual Wraith's refrain. That's the title of the story, after all. And it becomes a part of the curse more than anything else. So far, the only kind of supernatural element we've dealt with is this lake, and how this lake has been cursed since the time of the Druids and the invading Roman army in 60 AD, and then how it continues to the 1300s with these other maybe ancestors of the Druids, and then it continues to the 1500s we get involved with Sawney and his cannibalism, and now we're in the 1800s, the late 1800s, as the Industrial Revolution is starting. Maybe there's reverberations all over the world of the Industrial Revolution. People are leaving the farmland to go work in factories and have a different life. You know, we're still 50, 60 years away from suburban life. 2 kids and a white picket fence. Send your kids to school, then they go to college, then they get married and get a job. The corporations, that type of existence isn't there yet. They're still corporations, I guess. Like you could say, like whatever, that Dutch trading company, they were kind of a corporation. And I'm sure even in the 1800s, even before that, there were things that were organized like a corporation, but not how we know it today. So yeah, it's still a different time, almost 150 years ago in Scotland, but I still feel like English culture is connected to America because, yeah, that was the motherland until the Revolution. So there's so much of the English heritage to a lot of American history. It's just the way it is. We were colonies of England. So, of course, there's a definite connection in that time period. So when we come back and get farther into this story, the music will take over. And I said I need someone to compose the actual Wraith's refrain. It would be a little creepy piano melody because I don't think I could do that. Something simple would be preferred, yeah. As simple as possible to get that type of atmosphere, just like Jaws, just like other things I've mentioned, Halloween, and that movie It Follows has an amazing soundtrack. Stranger Things also put a lot of time and energy into the music and the soundtrack of Stranger Things. Not just in the Kate Bush and the Metallica tributes, but that was awesome. But just in the general soundtrack of Stranger Things, the opening theme music, so good. So that's a huge part of this movie. That's why I called it the Wraith's Refrain. And as you get into part 2 of this story, that's all this story relies on as this curse continues. Because I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here. I still have to read the rest of this story. But as we move into part 2 of this 2-part horror story, we follow the curse to America across the pond. And we follow this curse through the Wraith's refrain, through the music developed in the rest of this story. It almost becomes like a final destination. Part 2 is completely different in terms of the tone and the way I incorporate some of the horror tropes. Because, yeah, I'm not trying to create something new, although that is a good thing to intend to do. But even, I'm sure the Robert Eggers thing, he made The Witch, I'm sure he was inspired by other horror films from the past. I don't know what his main inspirations were, but I'm sure maybe he would have a similar discussion if somebody interviewed him or if there's any podcasts with him. He must have some love of horror movies from his childhood and later on in his life. That's what he seems to focus on. And really the only movie I've seen were those two. I have to watch The Witch, like I said. I feel like The Witch would bring out a lot of a similar atmosphere and time period that I'm trying to develop here. And yeah, I guess that's something I'll have to do at some point. But I'll come back later today. I think I got through the rough parts and I should be able to finish part 2 a lot quicker. I'm almost at 3 hours. This one was tough because I really had a lot of a lot of explanations in the beginning of this as we follow the origin of this fucking lake. And maybe that's why I selected Scotland, because just because of the Nessie thing. And I think in Scotland they call lakes loch, right? Is that true? They just term lakes lochs. That's why it's the Loch Ness Monster. I don't think I'm making that up. Yeah, a loch, Loch, is a Scottish or Irish Gaelic term for a lake or sea inlet, while a lake is the general English term. So even the language, you could see how it's connected to the Old English, or maybe that's offensive to call a Scottish word or an Irish term an English word. I just feel like there's all these rivalries in the UK that I don't really understand, even between like English people, like soccer rivalries. Maybe because I just watched that like Green Street Hooligans movie, and I read that book Among the Thugs, which kind of looks at hooligans in soccer, specifically in England. That's the best book I've ever read, but by the way, Among the Thugs by Bill Buford. He's a journalist that went to England in the early 90s, and he kind of went, not undercover, but he immersed himself in like an English football soccer club and experienced the hooliganism. And why does this culture promote, in a way, it does promote like this violence and tribalism. And there's a bit of a like nationalistic surge to that, because I feel like England were always feared when there was a World Cup in another country, and the English fans were like viewed as like an invading army, because there were like a lot of actual deaths from like riots, and there's examples of crowds that very tragic stories in Italy. I think one of the stadiums collapsed because there was too many people, and all these people died. There's a story in Liverpool, I think, too. I don't know when it happened, but yeah, something happened and all these people got trampled. It's a pretty major story, but I don't know the whole thing. I think they actually pay tribute to it during a lot of the matches. Yeah. I don't know if this is what it is, though. There's something that happened in 1989 between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest where 97 people died. Holy shit, dude. But this is a stadium in Sheffield, England. But something happened. There was a fatal crowd crush in 1989. 97 people died and like over 700 people got injured. The deadliest disaster in British sporting history, which led to major stadium improvements. So that's not really, I don't know what caused that. Was it a fight or a riot or just too many fucking people? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know enough about this. But that's pretty crazy, man. But yeah, I know there's so many rivalries between, I guess I look at it because I kind of follow the English Premier League, and you learn a little bit about the rivalries and stuff like that. Just like if an English fan would get into the NFL and they learn the Eagles and the Cowboys, their big rivalry, or Cowboys and the Washington, they were always big rivals. The Steelers and the Ravens, they were big rivals. Yeah, you get into sports in another country and you could learn about the culture of that country through the athletic and through the fans, really. Yeah, through the fans mostly. Learning about Wrexham. I never thought I would learn about Wrexham Soccer League But they made that documentary and it was just so gripping that it was hard not to get into it. But yeah, I'm always trying to be careful though, because I know there's rivalries that I don't really understand as an American from New Jersey. I don't fucking know. Just like the Green Street Hooligans, that movie where he goes over there and he becomes like totally in a way brainwashed by that violent. It was like a Fight Club appeal. Maybe that's what it is. That these hooligans and football clubs, maybe not so much anymore, but at least in the 90s and before that, it was just that caveman instinct to be the alpha, the alpha sporting club or the alpha within your own tribe, and you declare your dominance by kicking the shit out of somebody else. It's very caveman style, but there's an appeal of that. From the movie Fight Club, I kind of got, I came away from that movie thinking like, yeah, that was a messed up movie. But upon rewatching it, you kind of dig deeper into some of the themes. Why do people get off by violence? There's some people who get off sexually by getting dominated, and all those S&M type of clubs and stuff like that. But what is the appeal of violence? Does it make you feel alive? Yeah, I think so. I think that's one of the psychological elements of it that you can point towards. So when it comes to football hooliganism, what's the appeal? I would suggest reading that book, and I'll end it here before I get to 3 hours. Read Among the Thugs by Bill Buford. You can get it on your Kindle. That's how I read it, I think. Or I think I had a copy that I found at a thrift store, yeah. But I think I did buy it on Kindle too because I liked it so much. There's a bit of nationalism. There's a bit of this really hostile tribalism within that he was trying to understand, because you don't really get that in America. From time to time, you'll hear of there was a guy in a Rangers jersey and he got his ass kicked outside of a Philadelphia cheesesteak place or something. Or you'll hear a story in San Francisco, the rivalry between, I don't know, I think maybe the 49ers and Raiders back in the day, maybe they were rivals. And you hear about almost like gang warfare. And that's what hooliganism really was. I don't know if it really exists anymore. I think it probably does. Like, from what I gained from the knowledge I gained from watching the Wrexham documentary, yeah, I think they got into that a little. How these teams have fans that just travel with them almost to support them throughout the year. It's like the soccer season or the football season. I think it's longer, and I think the fans are more able to travel to all these other destinations hours away to watch their team and support their team, and it becomes like enemy combatants in a way. I don't think America has that same type of appeal like that. I think people are just like, yeah, I just want to go watch the game, man. Like Philadelphia almost had that reputation where if you come looking for trouble, then you're not going to have trouble finding it. If you're a Cowboy fan or a Giants fan or a Mets fan and you go to a Phillies game and you go looking for trouble and you're fucking with people, yeah, you might not really like the outcome of that. But if you're just cool, yeah, no one's gonna fuck with you. The best thing you could do is just play along and just have fun with it. If you're somebody wearing a Cowboys jersey during an Eagles game, I don't think you should feel like your life is in jeopardy. I worked at a lot of sporting events and I only saw a handful of fights. And usually it's just drunk people beating up drunk people. So the fights are very unentertaining. Like one time, this kid like puked. This is a different story. Some drunk ass kid like puked all over someone in front of him, and I think like they just kicked the shit out of him or something. But I can see that too. But usually it's just two drunk fans, and it's just when two drunk people fight, it's either going to be an amazing fight because they're so drunk and they won't feel the pain. Their pain threshold goes out of the park, and they have the ability, like superhuman beer muscle strength, and it could be a really good fight, or they just both fall over and kind of just run away at that point. So I've only seen a couple of really good fights in my life where during sporting events, like between an Eagles fan and a Washington fan. One time I saw a Mets fan, this really big, muscular, meathead Mets fan at a Phillies game. He's coming down the escalator, shouting his bullshit. Phillies suck, Phillies suck. And as soon as he came down, somebody just knocked him out. Coming down the escalator, like right in the middle of the concourse. It was pretty funny. It's never funny when you see somebody get knocked out. It actually is kind of scary, but I don't know, maybe it's your caveman instinct. Because yeah, when you see someone's head hit the pavement and you're like, they're knocked out completely, yeah, it is kind of fucked up. You're like, that dude could have like brain damage or some shit. So it's never good to see that. But sometimes, it just happens. When you involve 40,000 people in, well, baseball is not really a gladiator sport, but I would consider football a gladiator sport. You're watching people pummel each other. People have brain damage from playing football for 5-6 years. An actual new disease or a new condition, CTI, whatever it was, that can lead to suicide and derangement, whatever that's called. I don't know. Will Smith had a movie about that, didn't he? The concussions that NFL players from the past had to suffer their lives with. Supposedly that was Junior Seau, right? Junior Seau or Andre Waters. Formerly, he played for the Eagles. Am I making that up? Junior Seau. I don't want to say something that's not true about a famous person like that. All right, it's not CTI, it's CTE. Hall of Fame linebacker Junior Seau was diagnosed with chronic traumatic, encephalopathy. Encephalopathy. Let's go with that. CTE. Following his suicide in 2012 at age 43. So he had severe CTE caused by decades of head impact, which likely contributed to his brain damage, depression, and his death. Yeah, that's sad as shit, man. Junior Seau was a major name when I was growing up. He was one of the names because he just had a cool name too, but he was a hell of a player too. Yeah, that's sad. That's a sad story to end with. But it is a gladiator sport. Even though they're making millions of dollars, they're just pummeling and putting their bodies on the line. Andre Waters was somebody on the Eagles. I think he's another case. Andre Waters was an NFL defensive back for the Eagles in the early 90s and 80s. And after his suicide in 2006, at the age of 44, the autopsy revealed he had the CTE as well, with brain tissue degeneration comparable to a 90-year-old with Alzheimer's. Like, that's just terrifying, man. Because he was an extremely physical player, man. They called him Dirty Waters, yeah. I didn't watch the Eagles that much when I was that young. I have very minimal memories of Randall Cunningham and that team. I became an Eagles fan kind of when Rodney Pete was good and they killed the Detroit Lions in the playoffs. That's one of my earliest memories. Did Bobby Hoyne come before that or after? I don't remember. But I do remember Ricky Waters, Ty Detmer, and Irving Fryer. That was a fun team. Ricky Waters was a big time free agent signing. The Andy Reid years. When Donovan McNabb came, I became more of a huge Eagles fan. And during that time period, because the Eagles were good, making the playoffs every year. But Andre Waters, yeah, I knew him because people would talk about him. But that's a really sad story because he played football in such a way, probably since he was a teenager in high school, through college, and then he played in the NFL 1984 to 1993, so almost for 10 years. And they said his brain was comparable to a 90-year-old with Alzheimer's. That's what that shit did to him. Was it worth making all that money? I don't know, man. That's a crazy, crazy story. Like, that's a gladiator sport. These players are actually putting their lives in jeopardy. So it's a different perspective on athletics and just how much of a risk these people are taking. And I've heard athletes speak of that it's a risk that they are well informed of, and that's the price of admission. They're willing to take that risk that their brains could get fucked up to make $20 million a year. If I was good at a sport, would I make that decision too? Or would I inject steroids to make sure I can get a better contract, even though steroids might fuck me up mentally or physically when I get older? I don't know. All the hockey players of the past that used to fight, like the goonish types. I'm not saying that as an insult. That was like the funnest part of hockey in the 80s and 90s, when you just watch people beat the shit out of each other. But, I was a Flyers fan. You look at Eric Lindros. He had similar concussion problems. His brother, I think, did too. It's all kinds of weird shit, or just really sad stuff. Keith Primeau, I think Chris Pronger had it later. So even in hockey, they don't make as much as football players or baseball players or these international soccer players. But hockey players, yeah, they're a gladiator sport too, definitely. But there's an aspect to that to everything. I would say basketball and baseball are the most gentlemanly sports. Excuse me. Besides like golf, yeah. Just the four major sports. It's very rare you'll get a concussion in basketball, although Joel Embiid has bad luck with that. He's had like eye problems. Everything in his body has been fucked up at one point or the other throughout his career. If he was a healthier player without all these injuries, he'd be like the best player of all time. But he just had too many injuries throughout his life. Still to this day, like I don't think he's even playing now in the playoffs. But yeah, basketball and baseball, I would say they're less gladiator sports. You never, very rarely will see like a crazy injury besides somebody tearing their ACL, which is still a major injury, or an fractured ankle or something like that. But you don't see fights. Once in a while, maybe people will throw at each other, but you don't really see people get knocked out like in football or in hockey. And even though hockey took fighting out of the game, like it's still a very violent sport. There's still enforcers. I don't watch it that much anymore, but it's still a part of the game. But I don't think it's promoted. I think that's the difference. In the past, people would make a name for themselves in the minor leagues in hockey by being a tough guy. The Frank Bialowises and other people like that. the Philadelphia Phantoms was like the minor league team, and yeah, from time to time they would be more about fighting and more rough style. Like, of course, it's Philadelphia. It's where the Broad Street Bullies and all that shit. That's a part of the heritage that the Flyers kind of they wanted to keep that image for so many years, but it kind of just got aged out. It didn't work anymore. All the other teams were getting faster and more skillful. You can't keep trying to fit this style of hockey that doesn't work anymore. And yeah, over the decades, I think every sport has to evolve like that. But why the fuck am I talking about this? I don't know. Yeah, I was talking about English hooligans. Yeah. So maybe even soccer. It's not really a gladiator sport, but you do see people get injured. But it's more the fans. It's very weird. The fans are the gladiators more than the actual athletes are. At least back in the day, they would just have these tribal soccer battles between different teams. So it's really fucking crazy, man. I don't know what it's like today. I'm sure it still exists to some degree, but I'm going to end it here. Read that book by Bill Buford, Among the Thugs. It's the best book I ever read, just in general. It's from 1991. American journalist Bill Buford. And yeah, it's just so well written. I might have talked about it before. It's the best book I've ever read. I couldn't put it down. Like maybe around 2020, 2021, I read it. So that's how I'll end this one. I'll come back in a couple hours and I'll finish this story about Hilda and Flora and talk my other bullshit, whatever pops in my head. But yeah, so far I still like this story. I think it still achieved what I was going for, but this is my own biased opinion since I'm the one that wrote this story. And more than anything, the most complicated part of this production, in terms of the making this as authentic as possible. Sure, there might be some CGI needed in some of these dark scenes where there's blood spiraling from the lake and all these weird ritualistic blood sacrifices. You have to make it really creepy for the audience. So I would have to work with the right people to really bring this to life, because I can only talk about it to a certain degree. It's reliant on the cinematography, the CGI people, and the actors to bring this to life. To bring it to life to a degree that is not only authentic, but can legitimately freak people out. Because when I make a movie like this, I'm not trying to freak out easily scared people. There's people that easily can get shocked by a jump scare. You want to make a movie that can legitimately scar people. That should be your motivation, your main goal. The most hardcore, toughest motherfucker. Speaking of hockey hooligans, hockey goons like Bob Probert, and I said Frank the Animal Bialois, and Dan Carcillo. I remember that dude. Zach Ronaldo, was that his name? The Flyers had a lot of these guys that were just there to hit people and fight people, but a lot of teams had that. Bob Probert was like one of the main guys of the 80s and 90s. But you want to take people like that are just tough as nails. You want to make a movie that can actually scare those people. The most hardcore of people, like people who have seen battles in war, and they've been in war zones, and they've seen horrific things as police officers. They've seen the most horrific murder scenes. Those are the people that you want to get under their skin, because then you're going to achieve a good movie at that point. If you can scare those people, or at least get them uncomfortable, like what the fuck is going on, and scar them psychologically for at least that day or that night. So they're thinking about the movie. What Midsummer did to me. I was thinking about Midsummer for like a month after I saw it, because it just brought up all these weird connections between my Catholic upbringing, paganism, and just horrific visuals on screen. So I'm a big fan of that movie. I just have to watch his other ones, Ari Yester. I keep mentioning that one because that had a good effect on me. So that's my main objective. I want to make it as dark and as disturbing as possible. And hopefully I can get to that as I finish this story later on today.